I'm back, everyone. Anybody there? Let me know if you're there. Technically, I had to change computer. That computer is completely cactus. So I'm back. Please let me know if anyone is there. Make sure you like the video. Remember, it's Mahashivratri, so nothing's working tonight. Probably not supposed to be on the computer. So let me know. They can't just work. It's working now. Yes. I changed computer. I changed computer, guys. So let's see how we go. Take two. Yeah. Yes. Good to see you, Samanya. Amia, Sabrina. Yes. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for sticking around. Chamara. Good day, my friend. Oh, yes. Great to have you with us. So, guys, let's pick this up. Make sure you like the video so we can kick this stream off. Yeah. I've sorted the stream out. I don't know why I used that other computer. Let's not even go there. Yeah. So like I said to you guys, we're going to start with this text today. Yeah. And I know that you've all heard me read that part before. So as I said, the Īśvara Gītā is very important, especially when you talk about Shaivism, non-dual philosophy. So this one is very important, and I highly recommend this translation by Andrew Nicholson. So those who are some of the long-term subscribers would know that this book was number 2 book of the year back in 2019. So Jude, namaste, my friend. Happy Mahashivratri to everyone. So happy for all of you to be here. So make sure you all like the video, and make sure you share this. I haven't had a chance to share this link because, I've been working on the stream. So let's get everyone back in here. I hope they're out there somewhere. Yes, Carolyn, I'm back. Thank you all for hanging around, and and I know you probably had other things to do. So yes, so let's get into it. If any of you have any questions, please shoot them off and I'll see if I can answer them. Like I said before, those who have a super chat will go to the front of the queue and we will proceed from there. Yeah. So as I said, that this text here, the Īśvara Gītā, is actually a smaller part of the Karma Purana. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Puranas. The Puranas are where a lot of the great knowledges comes from, like Jyotish astrology, the yugas, all of the kind of the cultural tenets of Hinduism. A lot of them come from the Puranas, right? And the authors of those texts is Vyasa. So Vyasa is the author of the Mahabharata, the Mahayana, the Puranas, and other texts. Now, there's a lot of dispute there if it was just by the hands of one author. But from all intents and purposes, yes. So, I find it hard to be totally detached from close relatives and control my fully self. Do you have any tips to take full control of myself? I find it hard to be totally detached. Do you have any tips to take full control of myself? I find it really hard to totally be. Well, it's not that, it's not that it's totally, you don't want to think of that as also as a negative, right? Like, we have certain attachments to especially our blood relatives. And so, now I don't want to say that that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's just the way nature is, right? So there's an ingrained sort of sense of love and feeling towards our relatives. I guess the thing is that, and I think that I answered one of your questions in an Ask Jason back in January, is that a lot of people in family can kind of, especially if you're spiritually inclined and people aren't, people can tend to take advantage of you. And so, and that can become a big friction within your own spiritual practice, because you are doing your best to, show compassion and forgiveness and empathy towards all people, but your loved ones may not be on that spiritual path, right? So I know you're not talking about that. I would say that get rid of this idea of detachment from them. So the more you abide in the self, the more you abide in the Atman, and on a more of a regular basis, the more that you allow these relationships just to blossom naturally without the sort of this, like you said, they're vampires with this element of psychic vampirism, right? So you can just allow these relationships to be as they are without actually being like them, essentially. Like, because a lot of what happens is that, especially for people who are spiritually inclined, that sometimes we start to behave like the people that, you know, we don't want to be like. And that's not technically who you are. It just becomes a response because of the way you are treated by certain people in your family, which can be a problem, right? So that is one of the problems. But I would say that the more just being absorbed more in it and allowing your relationships just to be as they are, and I wouldn't, like, if you're too emotional about it, it still means in some sense that, you know, and I'm not saying that this is a bad thing, that you're overly invested in the relationship. And now, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, because I think that it's a beautiful thing to have blood relationships and this and that. But you did say all my blood relatives are vampires. That's why I wanted to be detached. Okay, yeah. So, yeah, but that's, you know, again, you'll probably still have a sense of love and empathy for them. But again, like, I mean, I've, like, to be honest, I mean, like, I have distance with my siblings, right? Like, because my mum and dad have both passed away a long time ago, and my two brothers and my sister, we naturally, well, they drifted apart from me because of what I do here, my work, right? And I think it's a bit different with siblings as opposed to probably parents. Well, that's what I found in my family, that, you know, that the bond with my mom and dad was strong, and I had a pretty good relationship with my mom and dad. They allowed me, you know, to do whatever I will. They disciplined me, don't get me wrong, when I was younger, and I deserved some of it too. So, but they were like really like my friends. My siblings, on the other hand, I still think I am friends with them, but they actually intentionally know that, you know, what I do, and their silence is actually, you know, the evidence of them disagreeing with sort of what I do. And I don't understand that, because I'm assuming that all of you enjoy what I have to talk about. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here, and I help a lot of people. And so, you know, I'm either or with that. So for that particular question of me, I think that the more you practice, the more you abide as in the Atman, the more frequently, then naturally, like, being detached from them will naturally occur. It's a natural process. Sometimes you can't just say, look, I don't want to see you anymore. You know, there's this new thing. I know that you probably all know this, where people say you need to edit certain people out of your life. And that may be all well and good for some friends you don't particularly want. But for family, it's a little bit more tricky. Yeah. So, guys, there's 16 in the chat, and there's only 8 likes. I need more likes so that the people were here before, they see this live stream. Yeah. So I hope you guys can help me out there. Let's have a look through the chat. Ekansh Mishra, is the mind in the body, or the other way around? By experience, we know that the body is experienced in the mind. Then why some yogis talk of astral travel, where it travels through space? Yes, Ekansh. Well, think about it this way. I'm talking to you now, right? How are you experiencing me? Are you experiencing me? I know that I'm coming into you through the eyes, but you are experiencing me through your consciousness, right? Like, and so the big debate especially between science and spirituality, is whether that the mind is local in the body or not. The mind can't be found in the body, right? And so if we go back to some of the oldest universities in the world, or if we go back to the oldest university being Nalanda in Bihar, in India, where we have great Buddhist teachers like Nagarjuna, Chandrakirti, and all of these great, even Shuangzan had traveled from, we all know the story, right? He traveled from China to Nalanda. And so the study, and we're talking like, again, we know that in India, the study of consciousness is thousands and thousands of years old, right? People in India would tell you it's like 15,000 years old. So, I mean, and that might be true, right? Like, we don't really know. We know it's at least in India, at least 3,000 years old, the study of consciousness itself. And so, and there's always been this sticking point, because we have this idea of Atman and Purusha, right, in Sanskrit. And so you have this pure awareness, this undifferentiated consciousness, but it's not local in the body. We could say, okay, Jason or Ekansh, the jiva is influenced by the body, the senses, what we take in, the imprints and this and that. But at the root of our being is this undifferentiated consciousness, which is the same as within everyone, right? And so Evan Thompson wrote a good book about this. I don't know if you guys know this. It's called Waking, Dreaming, Being. Now, it's a bit of a scholarly book, but a lot of the gold in that book comes towards the end of the text. And so I highly recommend that book, actually, for any of you. And he really goes deep into this idea of pure awareness not being, discovered in the body. And so that's what's really important. And science, as we know through neuroscience and also quantum physics, they are tending to agree with some of the spiritual practitioners in India and China and Southeast Asia for thousands of years, even though, like, the terminology is different. But it's funny, like, because in science, as you know, Ekansh, is that they don't, like, we have this great body of work, like what we're talking about today. We have this great body of work, thousands and thousands of years old, but a lot of people don't take it seriously, because it's related to Taoism, Buddhism, and Hinduism, and Jainism, and so forth and so on. So that becomes a big problem, right? So a lot of questions here. Amir, thank you, Ekansh. You're from Bihar, Ekansh, and your podcast. Thank you. Oh, I love Bihar. I don't know if you watched my documentary, The Art of Letting Go, but I mentioned actually the Gangetic Plains and the Terai area. So the Terai in southern Nepal and India and the Gangetic Plains, that area for me is one of the landscape. I just love it. I love it, Ekansh. I love that area, like being in Bodh Gaya and even going all the way to Varanasi and this whole area. It's oozing spirituality, and it's no wonder a lot of spirituality had blossomed in that area. And you wouldn't think it, right? Because you'd think, it's a lot of the area, especially in Bihar, especially around Bodh Gaya, is very, like, it's just plains, right? It's just plains. It's not like lush forests everywhere. I mean, there are, but they're not, not like going up into the Himalayas, right? So it's 8 p.m. All right, very good. So let's have a look. Samanya, so Sadhguru talked about a touch of us. Okay. Luther, glad you're back. Fingers crossed that the stream will stay connected. Me too. Make sure you like this stream, and please, if you're on social media, make sure you share it, so we can get it back out to everyone that was on the stream prior, right? So it's make sure you do that for me. And I might even chuck up another post up. So Luther said, what is Mahashivratri and why is it significant? I tried to answer this before. Mahashivratri is significant because, first of all, Luther, there are, every month there is a Shivaratri, right? Maha means great. And the Mahashivratri usually falls around February 13th, 14th of that lunar month, when we're coming out of, in India, when we're coming out of winter, and especially in February, it's already boiling hot in India, if you've been. And that is where there's a natural, it's believed to be a natural upsurge of energy that we experience through the night. So that's why they say it's important to have puja, to chant Shiva's name, to meditate all night, and so forth and so on. So it's really like you could say like a spiritual festival. Yeah, a spiritual festival. So yes, that's why it's significant. I mean, there's a lot more to it than that, but that's a brief summary. Jude, do you know the story of Shiva being reborn from a cow's ear in Kokana, Karnataka? No, I haven't. There's so many stories, Jude. Maybe I have, maybe I haven't. Unknown. Do you believe stars and constellations have influence over human life? Over the psychology of people, yes, unknown. Over the personality and psychology. Ultimately, if we're talking about the Brahman, then that is the ultimate source. There's no, that is the one, that is it at the base of also the stars. So I believe, yes, the stars and the constellations, and obviously we know this in general, right? From the moon, we know the moon has a direct impact on our life. So without the moon, who knows what would happen to human life? But obviously stars and the sun and everything else, and so much out there has influence over us. So Tyler, the documentary was amazing. Tyler, great to have you with us. Thank you for being here. Ekansh, if you come again to Bihar, maybe I can come to meet you. My village is near Nepal. Where do you live precisely, Ekansh? I've probably been through there. I've traveled through that area a lot. Carolyn, month of Magha. That's right, Mahashivratri. Tyler, what is your favorite spiritual teaching for young adults just beginning? Just beginning. That's a really interesting question. Just beginning. You don't want to dive too deep for young people, I guess, but as you guys have known from me explaining this a lot, my introduction to spirituality was through things like the Avadutta Gītā, the Īśvara Gītā. So I went from like 0 to 1,000 overnight. So I was reading Nidhyasana texts. So the Avadutta Gītā, to explain that, the Avadutta Gītā and the Īśvara Gītā are what we call Nidhyasana texts. So Nidhyasana texts are the texts that you read, they say, beyond the pale. So when you've essentially become enlightened, that's when these texts make sense. Well, either fortunately or unfortunately, they're the texts that I started my own path on. Even though I had read a lot of books when I was young about philosophy, psychology, and this and that, but when I really dived into Eastern spirituality, then that was the text I originally went to. So we're talking about really here like strict non-dualism. So especially with the Avadutta Gītā, we're talking about the Dattatreya tradition, which is the complete dissolution of the ego, and it's a really radical path, right? So if, it's horses for courses, really. Horses for courses, Tyler, because maybe there's some young adults out there that are crazy like me and they get into that sort of thing, or they might need a softer approach. Now, a softer approach for me would be probably the teachings of Taoism, probably Lao Tzu, probably the Tao Te Ching. I wouldn't even say the Zhuangzi, because the Zhuangzi is you're getting more deeper into Taoism and you start reading the Zhuangzi text. But if you start with the Tao Te Ching, then that's a very look. The Tao Te Ching is again not like an easy spiritual path, but it's maybe more maybe easier for younger people to comprehend, right? Like, because the Tao Te Ching's focus on humility and focus on, being soft and like, embracing the yin. So embracing the feminine and passive elements of ourselves rather than being active and a go-getter and coming from the very young mentality. So I would say definitely that would be a softer approach, and maybe even the teachings of the Buddha. Maybe even because if you look at the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, then that would be a way to a sort of a way to give someone their moral compass, right, so to speak, their spiritual moral compass. So, guys, there's 22 people in here, starting to build up, starting to build some momentum. So make sure you like the video, make sure you share it with some of your friends. We get this party started, yeah. Like I said, we're going to dive more into this. I'll be here for a long time. Don't worry about it, because I'm not sleeping tonight, so we're all good. We're all good. So it's 12:48 in Brisbane right now. 12:48 a.m. So there's only, I look out the window. There's no lights on. Only some nut here. So, all right, Sabrina, are you going to meditate with a specific focus or mantra tonight? Yes, Sabrina. I have already done a lot of meditation before the live stream, and focus really just on Om Namah Shivaya tonight. Yeah, like just to focus on the Om Namah Shivaya mantra. There's so many mantras related to Shiva, like Hari Hari Mahadev. Take a pick, even the Gayatri mantra if you want. But I would say particularly focus on, because the idea in Mahashivratri is to focus on Shiva itself, or Brahman. Remember, Shiva being a representation of Brahman, the ultimate reality. So a focus of putting your mind on that and meditating deeply on that. And when the mind starts to wander, maybe bring it back with Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. And just showing gratitude, yeah? Showing gratitude and just for your own existence and that we have the opportunity to do this, yeah, together. So it's an amazing thing, as opposed to, like just 100 years ago, we were in 2 world wars, to put it in perspective for you guys. So we are very fortunate in this day and age, even with the pandemic. So Luther Evans, I'm not sure I understand the dissolution of I. Don't we all have to have some type of self-concept? Do you think there can be such a thing as a healthy identity? Yeah, actually, Luther, I think that one of the things is that you can get into this game, right, see, the problem with Advaita Vedanta, with Westerners, is they get in this game of who's the one who was saying this? Who is the one who was saying this? And this is instantly an incorrect way to practice, because you have to develop just an awareness of the contents of your mind. And this comes with deeper practice. Now, it's the awareness itself that you want to abide as, because even though you think as Luther, you have mental activity as Luther, the awareness itself, you, I, and everyone here and everyone in the whole world, fundamentally, we are just presence and awareness, right? So we are present and aware. Now, the problems happen when we become aware of things, nama rupa, when we start to give name and form to things, right? And this is what builds the concept of Maya in our mind, and we start to measure reality. So once we have nama rupa, when we start naming and labeling, this is within all the spiritual traditions, right? Then that becomes a problem. So the thing is, when you say healthy identity, within a teaching such as Taoism, right, is that Taoism don't make a distinction between like the Jiva and the Atman as we have in Vedanta and other traditions in India. So Taoism will have this idea that actually we are naturally whole, but the I is a construct in the sense that you've taken on all of these concepts and all of these beliefs, and that you think defines who you are, and they don't define who you are, not who you truly are. they define an accumulative sense of self. Now, that's what we're talking about, right? An accumulative sense of self. We're even talking about that in Vedanta as well, mind you. We are, right? Like the ego is an accumulative sense of self. So all of the problems in the world is because of this accumulative sense of self, because then we start to build a conditioned self where it's got beliefs, it has a conceptual framework of the world, so forth and so on. So the podcast this week with Guyang and I on Sunday is actually about measuring infinity, about this very problem of nama rupa, about name and form, and about in building this conceptual framework, how that tends to mold us and create this sense of I that in general is the problem. And so the dissolution of the I from a Taoist perspective, Luther, is a dissolution of that construct. You exist still, but you've come back into contact with something much deeper. So that would be the healthy identity. This is why Zhuangzi talks about, the great sage Zhuangzi, Tao sage, talks about this kind of idea of being in the world and not of it, but in the sense of that you got to become genuine. The in Chinese is Gen Ren. Gen Ren means the genuine person or the true person of Tao. Gen first appears in the Tao Te Ching, and then Gen Ren appears in the Zhuangzi. So Gen Ren is this idea of being genuine. Now, you can only be genuine when you're coming really from your heart. And your heart does not have a sense of conditioning. The heart within you and within me they're all the same. They're all the same. And that heart is naturally, empathetic, humble, compassionate, forgiving, go down the line, so forth, so on. So that's really what's the healthy identity, right? And I think that in some sense, like all the spiritual paths are trying to get to that stage. Buddhism itself is a path like that, right? Because their whole moral philosophy is to inculcate that sort of awareness that this exterior of the persona is an artifice. It's not real. It's an illusion, and that's actually the perspective of all three of the traditions in Hinduism, Buddhism, and Taoism. But the terminology, it's language differently. The conceptual frameworks are different. But if you can see through that, then you can understand it at a deeper level. And that's kind of what one of the focuses of my channel is. And I know that you probably all enjoy that, and that's why you're here, is that I'm trying to language that for most people. So, and you did say that we all have to think with some type of self-concept. Yes, and that in a social sense, right? Because that becomes like what Zhuangzi says, like that's it's your social self. But you need to realize that social self is not who you truly are, because that social self is built on roles. And if you understand psychology, in general, that social self has, at a minimum, 15 egos. Now, that means that you have an ego that deals with a friend, this particular friend, that particular friend, your ego that deals with your parents. And so who are you truly, right? That's the fundamental perspective of Eastern philosophy. Who are you truly? Are you this one that you're acting with that guy? Are you that one? Now, but Zhuangzi would say it's beneficial to have those. He's saying that it's not that you shouldn't have those. It's important to be able to communicate properly with other people. So you don't want to just be a complete mute and communicate with when you go to a job and so forth and so on. So you see that a lot of people will do this when they follow, especially Advaita Vedanta. So Akanch, my village is near the city, Bitaya, in East Champaran towards R. Actually, I haven't been there. I hope to get there someday. Tyler, get your chart read. Samanya, sir, what is that holds us in this body? Is it desire? No. What holds you in the body, Samanya, is just the vital force itself. The vital force itself is within the body. Your chi, your prana, and everything is within the body. Your subtle body is there, but the self, or the Atman, is within this vessel. So you need to understand that this is a localization of the one consciousness. And this is just the equipment of the localization of consciousness. Now, what I mean by that is not just the body, but also the mind. The person you call as Samanya is a is the equipment of the localization of consciousness. So we are all like a focal point of that one consciousness. So what's holding us in there is that the vital force in the body has not expelled its energy, and so we remain. Now, in Taoism, the way that this is explained is we have Jing. So the Jing is like, think about this as your genetic battery. These are called the three treasures too. The Jing is like your genetic battery. So that's the energy and that you get from your parents. And so that battery over time slowly dwindles. And then you have chi. So chi is like the prana, the energy that we use from the Jing. And then there's Shen. Shen is the spirit, right? And so spirit, we could link this to, other forms like Atman and so forth and so on. So you have this whole realm. And then so what happens over time is that once the Jing begins to dwindle, then it's harder for chi to flow through your psychosomatic organism, right? And so then you slowly die, unless unfortunately someone suddenly dies. But desire, because you mentioned desire will keep you locked into the cycle of samsara. So you'll be locked into the body through desire. So when you have all of these desires, then if they're not cleansed before the time of your passing in this particular form, then that's how you have another birth, according to the great traditions. So the role is to cleanse those desires. Now, it depends, because like when you start to split hairs, you don't want to get down to the realm of you start to desire not to desire. So even that desire. So you have to even get to the stage where you're not even thinking about desires. You've come that far on your spiritual path that none of that is related to you at all. Like you're just living your life without any concept of you have desires, you don't have desires. You are like, there's a phrase in Japanese, it's called unsui, and unsui means to drift like a cloud and flow like water. And that's what the enlightened mind is like, to drift like a cloud and flow like water. You're not attached to anything, and you live a life of no deliberation. So you're not stuck to anything, right? Desires help this binding process, helps you stick to things. And so this becomes a problem. So I hope that sort of answers the question somewhat. Rohit, dissolution of I would result in being in the present moment completely, no doubt about it. Carolyn, I'm NAMAH SHIVAYA, love it. Who we got here? Help you find out about you. No. Amir, the last one, we spend too much time with different people with positive, negative energies, and at the end, we get exhausted. How can we cleanse ourselves from this exhausted energy? Let me think about that one, Amir. Shauna, I'm satisfied with the process. It takes time. It takes time to make changes and absorb new ideas after being conditioned to think and act in specific ways, for sure. Preston, hi, Jason. Good to see you today on Mahashivratri. Thank you, Preston. How will you be spending the day? Actually, it's already 1 a.m. Preston. So I've spent Mahashivratri all day, just been at home doing my thing, and I'll be up all night, obviously, with you guys. So Om Namah Shivaya. Is Shiva not a duality? No, Shiva is non-dual. I'm confused. Shiva is non-dual, super stargazer. Shiva means not two. John C, greetings. John, great to have you with us. Guys, make sure you like this. Make sure you like the live stream. Let's get this live stream out to everyone. Make yourself, please. There's 27 here. Tell me where you're watching from. Let me know. Let me know where you're watching from. Is my voice deep again? Turd, is my voice deep? There you go. The first stream I did, the stream was going good, and then my voice was good. And now do I sound like Darth Vader again? I guess I do. Okay, what do we got? I thought there was only Brahman. So Shiva is a manifestation of Brahman. What about other gods? Super Stargazer, from the Shiva perspective, Shiva is the representation of Brahman. Brahman is an object of knowledge, right? But Shiva is that representation. That's why through such texts as the Īśvara Gītā, Shiva is explaining what Brahman is. The same as in the Bhagavad Gītā, right? The Bhagavad Gītā, Krishna is explaining Brahman to Arjuna. And so it depends on what tradition you follow. Like if you follow Vaishnavism or Shaivism, the gods are different as representations of the absolute. The only god that's not out of the Trimurti is Brahma, the creator. There's not really a Brahmaism like this. There's like only Shaivism and Vaishnavism. So Shiva is a representation of Brahman, so the ultimate reality. That's what it is. And so I hope that explains about what other gods too, because the two of the main texts, so the Īśvara Gītā and then the Bhagavad Gītā, they are both. You probably weren't here for the first live stream, but they're both a representation of Brahman. And in this one, in Lord Shiva's song in Īśvara Gītā, Vishnu actually plays like an extra and a cameo in this one, and Shiva is kind of the main actor, right? Because Shiva is Brahman itself. And so, reinstall Paul. There is subjective self, which is necessary to navigate the practical world, and then there's objective self. Yes, of course, 100%. We get wrapped up in the subjective, practical image of self, forgetting our true objective self. That is true. That is true. Luther, how would you explain the difference between mantras and affirmations? Recently, I've gotten into the vibrations of the words and the I am statement, but I know less about mantras. Well, the difference with mantras and specific affirmations is the mantra is a technology in itself that essentially you don't need to know what it means. The vibration and the sound itself plays a particular function on your own mind, whereas an affirmation is a particular, a phrase or whatever to achieve a certain end, where the mantra itself is not, in a sense, like supposed to achieve. Well, let's maybe achieve like enlightenment and so forth and so on, but it's not meant to. Well, you don't need to know what it is. Like, this is why when you get initiated into a mantra with a guru, sometimes the guru will give you a mantra and you'll ask them, like, what is this? And they say, don't worry about what it is. Just, this is what you chant from now on. Obviously, you can go and Google what it means or something like this, but and then it may mean something to you. But the mantra itself is a technology. That's why mantra, when we look at mantra, Luther, mantra is made up of manas, meaning mind, and tra, meaning tool. So a mantra is a mind tool. That's what mantra means. It's a mind tool. It's a specific technology to get you to a higher state of consciousness. That's what the point of the mantra is. So, and that's why when they do cymatics with Sanskrit and Hebrew and these older languages, that there's a particular vibratory quality to them, which you can test through cymatics and things like this. Insalubrious Dityaram. How are you, Jason? I'm good. Great to have you with us. Wow, we're really picking up now. We're 27. Guys, make sure you like the stream. Make sure you like the stream. Make sure you like it and share it with your friends so we can get more in. We can party. And what is God according to Hinduism? Well, this is why I have this text here. So God according to Hinduism is, you have to get out of the idea of God first. God, when people think of God, what do they think of? They think of a creator, right? A Lord, lording it over the world. And so when we talk about Eastern philosophy, we have to talk more about an ultimate source or an ultimate reality, but is not a Lord that's, judging people and condemning people. There's just energy, right? Like karma itself is the result of action. It's the result of karma means action. It comes from the root word kri. So even in this text, Shiva explains to the great sages that it doesn't have a agenda for people, right? People will have to practice and follow the path of yoga to attain the ultimate realization. And we won't give that a name, even though they do name it Shiva or Īśvara, but Brahman being that ultimate reality, and Shiva or Īśvara being the representation of that. And so this is a problem when people translate, especially when they translate. You see, when the English first went to India, right, they translated a lot of text through a Christian lens. And so then they superimpose God onto Brahman, and it doesn't make sense. And they superimpose all these other things because the Brahman's not a creator. The Brahman's the ultimate reality. This reality itself is just a byproduct of Brahman. So that's why I began the last stream with actually these 8 phrases that I don't know that if people were listening or some of you were there, but in chapter 3 of this one, it says, from the manifest came time, primeval matter, and the supreme spirit. The whole world was born from these 3. So the world consists of Brahman. It dwells in the world, enveloping everything, hands and feet everywhere, eyes, head, face, and ears everywhere. It appears to possess all qualities and all senses, yet is free from all of them, supporting all things. It is eternal bliss, the unmanifest, free from duality, without any object of comparison. Its range is beyond the means of knowledge, the abode of all things, supreme immortality, beyond mental construction or semblance, undivided, yet appearing as divided. It is eternal, fixed, and unchanging. It is without qualities, the highest space, and is the knowledge the wise understand. It is the self of all beings. It is the external, the internal, the supreme. It is I, all-pervading and calm, the highest Lord, whose essence is knowledge. I, whose form is unmanifest, pervade this entire world. All beings dwell in me. He who knows this knows the Vedas. Vedas here means the knowledge of Brahman, right? So hopefully you can all contemplate on that one. So, but that's Shiva. That was actually Shiva speaking about the nature of Brahman itself. So Shiva's like same in the Bhagavad Gītā, where Vishnu is like the spokesman of Brahman, right? So in this context, Shiva is explaining to the sages of the time the knowledge of Brahman. They ask Vyasa, and then Vyasa then introduces Vishnu, and then Shiva comes along and goes, "Get out of the way, let me explain this," right? So that's what actually happens there in that one. So Terry, watching from New Forest in England. I love it. Sasha, Georgia, love it. Welcome. Wow, the chat's going crazy. Let me have a look. Shiv Runner, Jason Baji, you are doing great of ultimate universal higher understanding, but fundamental for individuals who does not know themselves Atma, they might be confused. Param Shanti. Thank you, Shiv. Thank you. Thank you. Luther, yes, your voice is deeper, but at least it's not buffering. That's weird. The other computer was clear, but yeah, it was buffering. Turd Flinging Monkey, welcome back. It's not too bad. It sounds like, yeah, your artificial deepening. Yeah, and I don't know why. Insalubrious. I'm from Guwahati. Oh, wow. Guwahati. There's a famous temple on the river there, yeah? Guwahati. What's it called? Insalubrious? Guwahati is it in Assam? Might be in Assam. Stance, hello from Canada and blessings. Welcome. Jason, a way to understand representation pantheon from the Western perspective is that during the Rome, Sol Invictus was considered God and the Hellenistic gods were metaphorical aspects of Sol. Well, there you go. What do we got? The kind of fasting is recommended for this time. What kind of fasting is recommended for this time? Well, it depends. What sort of sadhana you want to do during this time. Usually, people will eat like one meal a day, or over tonight they might not eat anything. They might just drink like water or tea or something along those lines. And that's the general fasting. But usually a lot of people will start a sadhana before Mahashivratri, probably 10 days before, and will eat like not kind of similar to Ramadan, where you might eat like only at nighttime, and you will reduce your activities for those 10 days and focus on this on getting to this particular night. John C. With multiple mantras suggested, is there one that takes care of your spiritual needs? Not particularly. I mean, it depends. Like the ones I mentioned, like Hari Hari Mahadev, Om Namah Shivaya, the Gayatri mantra. Even if you look at the Mahavakyas, which are like the four main phrases in Vedanta, I mean, you can chant those as well, and people do chant those. If you go to places like Gangotri and that in northern India, then you'll find sadhus in that chanting Aham Brahmasi and these sorts of phrases, which means basically I am Brahman without the I, so to speak. Shiv Runner, Jason Baji, your explanations in simple words is quite logical, but the reality is there are millions of Shiva in one galaxy. Wow. Not technically, my friend, not from what we find in the text, because galaxies are only a small fraction of what Shiva is. Okay. All right, guys. Make sure you like the video. Anushrat. Namaste. Wish you all blissful Mahashivratri. Jaipur. Love it. Luther, are you referring to the subconscious mind when you say fasting the mind? Some people believe in reprogramming the subconscious. Yes, referring to that, in fasting the mind, I talk a lot about samskaras. Now, samskaras are like the karmic stock that we have deep within in our subconscious. So, and when we talk about samskaras and subconscious, because they're the same, is we're talking about mental impressions and subconscious subliminal imprints that we all take in through our mind throughout our life. So I am essentially talking about that, but talking about fasting the mind in the sense of also not taking in too much activity also through the mind. So it's kind of a dual concept where you're trying to you're keeping out a lot of things from your mind, because that allows the fasting process to work in the subconscious, right? If you're continually looking at Twitter and all of this and that and watching Netflix all the time, your subconscious is going to be polluted with a lot of information. So you got to crowd out a lot of that, right? You got to get rid of a lot of those external stimuli and impressions, because that's only going to continue to pollute your mind. And that's the idea of fasting the mind. So it begins actually just in the process begins by avoiding a lot of external stimuli and mental impressions and this and that. And so very good, guys. And like I said to you guys today, we're going to talk about the Īśvara Gītā. And those who are on the first stream probably heard me say a little bit about this. But as I said, it's a text on Shiva. And this actually is attributed to Vyasa as well. So like I said to you before, like Vyasa is thought of as the author of the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, the Puranas, and other texts, and also the compiler of the 4 Vedas. Remember, the 4 Vedas were one when before we entered into Kali Yuga, as the Puranas state. So this one is actually found in the Puranas. It's found in the Karma Purana, and it's a small section in the Karma Purana. And this became the kind of the main text for Shiva worshippers. And so I want to explain a little bit more to you guys about this one. Yeah. Actually, the Karma Purana, you can translate that as the Purana of the tortoise incarnation. Yeah. The tortoise incarnation. And so this text comes from what we would call the Pashupatas. And the Pashupatas are, translated into English, are the masters of the beasts, right? The Pashupatas is masters of the beast. And so what we would say they were a group of Shiva worshippers, and their origins are really unknown. The first appearance of the Pashupatas actually appear in the Mahabharata. So we find the Pashupatas in Mahabharata, but they're a lot older, and a lot of people don't really know the origins of the Pashupatas. So when you think of Pashupatas, you're kind of thinking about the Shiva sadhus with all of the ash smeared all over them. And I don't know who of you have been to Nepal, but one of the main places and one of the main Shiva places of worship in the world is actually in the Kathmandu Valley, which is actually called Pashupatanath. So which obviously is alluding to the Pashupatas. So that's what we find, yeah. So the Pashupatas are responsible for this knowledge, this non-dual knowledge of Shiva, that which has actually influenced a lot of traditions, especially in southern India when we look at Advaita Vedanta in southern India. So Carolyn said, I thought Ganesha wrote Mahabharata. No, Vyasa. Well, Ganesha is a scribe, but Vyasa is the author of, well, thought of as the author, but you need to remember that a lot of scholars these days, Carolyn, think that it came from the hands of many individuals, talking about the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, the Puranas. But, historically, it's thought of as just Vyasa wrote those texts. So, and those texts are what we would call the Smriti. So they are like the traditional texts. They're not the Shruti, not the revealed text of the Vedas, right? The Vedas are the revealed text. The Rishis, the Sapta Rishis, are the ones who revealed the Vedas, and they were what was an oral tradition, but were documented into 4 Vedas through Vyasa, coming into, if you believe this or not, coming from Dwapara Yuga into Kali, because of the spiritual aptitude or lack of spiritual aptitude we would have in the Kali Yuga. So that's Well, that's the actual historical record. Is Vyasa is the author of those. So, but like I said, you can debate whether there was one author or two author or 10 authors. It's like the Zhuangzi text, right? In Taoism, like when you have a look at the inner chapters of the Taoist of the Zhuangzi, it seems like it came from the hands of one individual. But then when you get out to the outer chapters and the miscellaneous chapters, it looks like there's a lot of other authors. So, Preston, I'm in California and it's 7:20 a.m. Should I have celebrated Mahashivratri? No. Today, it's for you today, Preston. I remember I'm in Australia and you're in California, so I'm already ahead of you. So all good. Anushrut Shrama. There is an artifact of the Indus Valley civilization, which is commonly known as, yes, the Pashupati seal. That's right. That is the oldest known depiction of Shiva. That's right. I actually have that image in my book, Enlightenment Now, where I'm talking about the Indus Valley civilization. So, yeah, the Pashupati, and that's ancient, right? Anushrut, that's ancient. 80, Namaskaram, my friend. Shivran, Jason Budgie, you are just talking about one Brahman solar system, but Sri Mat Bhagavad Gita says about Anayana. Yeah, but the ultimate reality we're talking about here, Shiv, you're talking in technical terms of like certain worlds like Vaikuntha and that, and Brahmaloka and all of these realms, but the ultimate reality of Brahman, right? And I know that you could talk about this in different contexts, especially if you look at it through Krishna consciousness movement and all of these things. They have different interpretations. But if you look at it especially from a Vedanta perspective, then that's not the case, right? That's not the case. And so, and I think that, especially like if we look at Vedanta as the knowledge, the essential knowledge of Hinduism, we have to start looking at it from that perspective. Brahman, the ultimate reality, is not an object of knowledge. So it's not a galaxy, it's not a universe, it's not an object of knowledge. It's one undifferentiated reality that this arises in and will return to. But in saying that, it's all that. It's immanent within reality, but also transcends reality. So, guys, make sure you like the content, yeah? Make sure you share this link to someone. And I'm trying to get this link out to as many as possible, because those who missed the live stream, I'm glad that you're all back. I'm glad that some of you are all back anyway. Good to have you. Remember, 33 that are on here, make sure you let me know where you're coming from. We've got India in the house, America, many in Europe. Wahid, Kalik, UK. Love it, my friend. Thank you. Jaipur. Unreal. So let's have a look at the Īśvara Gītā. Yeah, let's have a look at the Īśvara Gītā. And I want to explain to you guys, well, especially what Andrew Nicholson said in the Īśvara Gītā, which is very, very, very important. So, Atif, what are your views on psychology as an independent science and in relation to Eastern spirituality? I think that it is important. I think that psychology it benefits from Eastern spirituality, but I also think that Eastern spirituality benefits a lot from psychology. And I think that if you look at the work of Georg Fürsten, if you look at the work of Ken Wilber, and you get into, even if you look at like the text, like even if you look at the work of Aurobindo, then you start to get this relationship between psychology and Eastern spirituality. Even Jung was big on this, right? And so I think that one of the good things about psychology coming from the West is that we can start to deal with the persona. We start to know a little bit more about the persona, as opposed to just trying to dissolve the persona, which some traditions in the East do. And if you haven't had enough training, Atif, then trying to dissolve the persona and having all of these things about yourself will cause a lot of psychological problems. Ken Wilber actually, he mentions spiritual dickhead, right? So he says you don't want to become a spiritual dickhead. That's what someone becomes, and that's when you start to engage in spiritual bypassing, and the realization that you have is not really reflected through your personality and through just your way of being. So that's really important. Psychology is a really important part of, especially in this day and age. I think because of the complexity of the world, definitely it's a big part. Charles, first time here. Charles, welcome, my friend, from the Acadian Forest. Wow, love it. AD, Belgium, welcome. All right, excellent job. Shiv Runner, Jason, Vaji, to understand Shiva, one should read Mahashivratri. That's what this is. This is the Shiva Purana. The Īśvara Gītā is the Kurma Purana. This is what it is. That's the Shiva Purana, Shiv. So that's what I'm explaining today. This is this small section of the Purana that is attributed to Shiva. Carolyn, what's all the noise in the background? Don't worry about that. Study the Mahavakyas. Yes, Charles. Study the Mahavakyas. Very important, very important. I was actually going to do a whole video on the Mahavakyas, the four great Mahavakyas. Sure, North Carolina, Appalachian Mountains. Oh, I love it. 80, Jung was afraid to go and meet Maharishi. I actually heard that story was overblown. I heard that it was impossible for Jung to get there. So I don't think he was afraid. I mean, I know that a lot of people, like, I don't know what this is in spirituality, like where people these days, they have this like spiritual one-upsmanship. Like, he was so scared. It's like, no, that's not the case. It was circumstantial, actually. It was just overblown. John C., what is the difference between Shiva and Brahman? John, there's no difference. Shiva is a representation of Brahman, right? So that's what I want to get into today about this one. Yeah, I keep saying I want to get into this, but I keep answering questions. The thing is that you have to think about, especially like I mentioned, like Īśvara Gītā, Shiva is a representation of Brahman. Bhagavad Gita, Vishnu is a representation of Brahman, the ultimate reality. So that's what the difference is. So they're kind of like a spokesman, but they're Brahman themselves, right? And so, and I'll explain that because there's a lot about that in this. So, as I was saying to you guys before, so the Pashupatas, like I said, they were first mentioned in the Mahabharata, right? And so Andrew Nicholson, to explain the Īśvara Gītā, because I want to get deep into this text with you guys, because, I think that we can have a great time together. It's 1:30 in the morning here too, guys. Let me know what time it is where you are. 1:30. I'm usually not awake after 9:30. Who am I kidding? Anyway. So good. So let's have a look here. The Īśvara Gītā, Lord Shiva's song, is a philosophical poem that conveys the teachings of the Pashupatas, a group of Shiva worshippers who would have a profound and lasting influence on the development of Hinduism. This is very important. Since its composition in the 8th century CE, it has been an inspiration to generations of philosophers, devotees, and yogis in India. Like its famous predecessor, the Bhagavad Gita, Song of Lord Krishna, it goes beyond mere philosophical theory to describe a regimen of spiritual exercises to achieve self-transcendence and absolute freedom. These spiritual exercises, the Pashupata Yoga, are a regimen of ethical discipline, breath control, physical postures, and mental concentration through which the yogi attains divine knowledge, power, and liberation. Pashupatas are not content just to know God, Brahman. Remember, like I said here, Nicholson is using God sometimes here as well. The ultimate goal of Pashupata Yoga is to become Brahman, to attain Lord Shiva's majestic power and wisdom in this very lifetime through mental absorption and union with him, the Lord of Yoga. Shiva's usually considered as the Lord of Yoga, right? And I'm going to get into this a little bit with you guys as well, because there's a difference between Patanjali's yoga, which is what has become kind of the idea of classical yoga, and this older yoga, which is attributed to Shiva, which we could just call Pashupata yoga or Shiva yoga. Nicholson continues, many teachers between the 2nd and 5th centuries CE as the authoritative set of guidelines for yoga practice. But examination of Patanjali's work reveals that many of the central ideas and practices of yoga, as understood in later times, are absent. One notable difference is Patanjali's relative lack of interest in physical postures, asanas, the main focus of practice for modern-day yogis. Another surprise for some Hindus might be the place of Īśvara. So Brahman, I mean, think about it as a representation like Shiva or Vishnu as Īśvara in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. So Patanjali doesn't really explain, when he says Īśvara Pranidhana, he doesn't really explain, do you mean Shiva or Vishnu? And he sort of places that at a lower place compared to Samadhi. Although often described as the classical Hindu yoga, Patanjali system, worship of and meditation on Brahman or Shiva, Vishnu, whatever, is, according to Patanjali, a mere preliminary practice to the highest form of yoga, Samadhi, according to Patanjali. This contrasts with the understanding of most Hindus, for whom God absorption is the highest yogic practice. The Īśvara Gītā, Lord Shiva's song, shows some influence from Patanjali's 8-limbed Ashtanga yoga. According to this later text, however, Patanjali's highest form of mental absorption, Samadhi, is a lower yoga, below absorption in God. So the Īśvara Gītā also shares many concepts and themes with the famous Bhagavad Gītā, composed some 6 centuries earlier. The most obvious difference between these two texts is the God who represents their teachings. In the Bhagavad Gītā, it is Krishna in disguise as a charioteer, Vishnu, who instructs the great warrior Arjuna on the subtleties of philosophy and sacred duty, dharma. In the Īśvara Gītā, it is Shiva as Pashupati, master of beasts, who instructs a group of sages about the highest truth and the means to realize it through the practice of yoga. Shiva says that he himself is supreme, the source of creation for all other gods, and the ultimate focus of yogic concentration. In the popular imagination, and especially among non-Hindus, Shiva is regarded as the god of destruction. However, according to the Pashupatas, who composed the Īśvara Gītā, he is something much more, the creator of the universe and the ultimate source of worldly bondage and liberation. So, yes, that's just to give you guys a kind of a framework of the Īśvara Gītā, yeah? So, a lot of people believe that the Pashupatas and that grabbed hold of the Īśvara Gītā because they wanted something for themselves, right? Something to rival the Bhagavad Gītā. But I'm going to get into that because you will see that the stark difference between the Īśvara Gītā and the Bhagavad Gītā is a difference in relation to action, as into renunciation. Now, for those of you who are familiar with Shiva, would know that it's a massive renunciate path, right? It's focused on renunciation, and I mentioned this in the first stream earlier that when we look at the Bhagavad Gītā, that's more related to, in some sense, as Andrew Nicholson, I'll read this a little bit for you in a minute, more related to what Andrew Nicholson would say, that the householder. So learning karma yoga and following like what we would say is nishkarma karma. Yeah. So I hope you guys are enjoying the live stream. Let me know. Give me a thumbs up if you're enjoying the live stream so far. So, and I hope you're all doing well. And let me know if you're unfortunately in lockdown or something along those lines. You know, it's a nightmare out there these days. So let's have a look. Where are we? 16:30 in Belgium. Wow. Love it. Lyle, 9:30 a.m. in Texas. 80 Īśvara is sublime, not really God, as I understood. That's right. Insalubrious, when doing Vipassana, how do I know I am doing it right? When doing Vipassana, how do I know I'm doing it right? Well, you will you will start to feel your awareness move maybe from your awareness of your breath, the anapanasati, to the sensations in your body. And then once you move to the sensations in your body and you place your awareness on that, then you will start to open up deeper levels within your mind. That's how you start to know that you are actually getting into insight. So you're starting to get into it. You know, Vipassana means insight meditation, right? So we start with anapanasati. We start with the natural awareness of our breath. So the awareness of respiration. And then once you become aware of the breath just in its natural rhythm, and you start to notice your thoughts are gone, and then your mind starts to sense the sensations in your body, maybe where pain is and this and that, without, again, the wandering mind, then you'll start to realize when you're in Vipassana. I was going to ask you, could you talk about Vipassana meditation? We can talk a lot more about it, Luther, for sure. AJ, hello. Oh, thank you, my friend. Ben, this is great. Thank you. Ben, thank you for being with us. AD, okay, in Belgium, free to go around. Wow, that's good. That's good. In Australia, we've been, I'll say in Brisbane, we had probably a 3-day lockdown. I mean, like, it wasn't anything, you know, like what you guys have experienced in North America and India and Europe and places like that. Turd flinging monkey, Jason, do you use your beads for meditation? How do you count the beads with your hands on your knees in lotus posture? Yeah, so simple with Turd, I love that name too. Every time you hear it, I love it. With the breath, every time with the breath, I change beat. And as you know, most beads have 108. So I go through that process. I don't use beads a lot when I meditate. So today I have, just because of the Rudraksha's relationship to Shiva. And I usually keep these on me when I'm, especially on a bus or something like that, just to keep, bring the mind back to being present and my breath, and using the beads as a tool in that way. When I'm in lotus posture in the hands, I will rest. I can just give you a description. Just like this, just simple. So they just rest in this hand. So it'll just obviously move as I'm going, right? So, you know, beads are a good tool. But I think that sometimes beads can be a distraction for people who are beginners, especially in meditation. Now that may sound silly, but I think that when you have a bit more miles on the cushion, beads can be a bit more to break up the monotony of maybe other certain, a particular focus on, say, if you're doing Vipassana and you just focus on the breath a lot and you want to mix it up, then beads can be good. But beads are generally used for a tool in general life as well. Like I remember when I would meet certain teachers and this and that, and they would always just be talking and, you know, but like they're focusing on their beads, right? So Sanket Javadev, there is so many forms of Lord Shiva, Pashupati, yes, Bhairavya. Can you explain them? Well, they're explained through different stories, Sanket. That's to explain all of them. Well, Pashupati, like I said, master of the beast. If we look at Pashupati, Sanket, Pashupati is translated as master of the beast, right? So when we talk about master of the beast, we're talking about mastering our animal nature. So we are an animal, right? And we have an animal past, but through the course of evolution, we became human. And so to amplify the human qualities, we have to become master of our internal beast. And that's the idea of Pashupati, right? So that idea, see, each form of Shiva has a different representation. So if we look at the oldest representation of Shiva is Rudra, right? Rudra we find in the Vedas. Like we actually don't find Shiva in the Vedas. Shiva we find in later texts. We find Rudra, but Rudra actually is Shiva in the Vedas. So they all have a different function, and a different function, like a meditative function, a different quality and certain stories. And so, I mean, it's a longer conversation, especially but today, because we're talking about Pashupati, and we'll focus on that today. So, Anushrat, isn't it a bit late at your place right now? Yes, it's 1:44 a.m. Anushrat. So we'll be up for a long time. Make sure you guys like the video. Make sure you share it with your friends, and we will go from there. So I always say I'm so grateful, guys, that you're here. Yeah, always so grateful, and I love this community, and I just love connecting with all of you. Like I see Finn Sky there. Finn, much gratitude to you, my friend. You know, like it's amazing developing relationships through this social media. I don't take it for granted, and I don't take any of you for granted. So thank you for all being there, and much love to all of you. You know, so guys, like I'm going to keep going as long as I can tonight. So my aim is not to sleep tonight. So it's 1:45 a.m. It's time to pay it back to the community. Yeah, sometimes you just got to pay it back. You got to give thanks. You got to pay it back. So thank you. 1 second, guys. I'm just putting a link up. Let me. Just putting the stream link up. So very good. All right, that is done. So, Lewis, I'm NAMAH SHIVAYA, AJ. You guys love it. Go crazy now. I don't care, man. Go crazy. It's all good. I love it. Anupam Day. What should we understand? What? We'll come back to that one. True visions. What is the purpose of bang during Mahashivratri? What is the purpose of bang? Well, look, I don't have any bang, but I have been. I don't know how much time I've actually spent in Varanasi, True Visions, but when Mahashivratri is on and in Varanasi, the bang is flowing. I have a friend. He loves bang. He's Indian, obviously. He lives in Varanasi. And I remember the first time I met him, I was having a chai with him, and he had some bang there. He's like, "Do you fly?" And I was like, "What do you mean, do I fly?" He's like, "I've been flying for 20 years, man." He showed me his bang. I'm like, "Oh yeah, definitely have been." The purpose of bang would be if we just look at any sort of psychoactive in general, right? Like to do with the Shiva tradition, it's a form of it actually used to be a ritualist. It used to be part of ritual, right? A lot of, especially marijuana, used to be part of ritual. So you have a lot of this ritualistic tenets with marijuana in Shaivism, and then so that's the purpose of it. Is to, again, like the belief. Like if you've met any sadhus, they feel that when they smoke a lot, or they have bong, then they feel like they're closer, or they're more absorbed in Shiva. It's very similar to like shamanic cultures in South America, and a lot of people do think of like sadhu cultures, especially as shamanic cultures. And they kind of are a little bit, especially when you get up into northern India and you get into places where they are detached from society. But when you're somewhere like Varanasi, then everyone's just all crammed in together. So Finn Scanner, Finn, love it. Yes, true. I just go to quiet places and avoid the madness in the city as much as possible. Big, expansive places work well. I now live full-time in my van. Wow, I love it. So my time is spent much more in such areas. Love it. Well done. Luther, what are your thoughts on energy and frequency healing? I know I have a lot of friends who are into that, Luther. I have a lot of friends in that. I don't really focus too much on that, because I think that my experiences with energy healers is this. They may be astute at what they're doing. They may be good at what they do, and they've gone themselves through a lot of energy healing, but they don't understand a lot of things, and they don't comprehend a lot of things, and they still have things about themselves in their personality that are tics, right? And so, like what I said before, when Ken Wilber said spiritual dickheads, a lot of energy healers and that can become like that as well. Not all. I'm just saying some, and some that I've known, and it's kind of I would say, like almost like an archetype of that field, because I've been all over the world. I've spoke all over the world and lived in many different countries, and a lot of energy healers have certain similar traits. Like I said, not all, but when you start to see that there's a lack of understanding about the deeper levels of spirituality and philosophy, then the healing hasn't done its job right? And if there's still ticks within the personality and people are still bitter and jaded about certain things and are a-holes to other people, then I don't really think that they've been healed, so to speak. And healing's such a strange word to use, right? Healing, like, because what we're sort of trying to understand, especially with our personality and our conditioning, is we're trying to come to an understanding of that. Some things need to be healed, right? Like trauma and psychological trauma and this and that needs to be healed. But when you get into deeper elements of spirituality, you have to start to understand your persona and the psychological construct. So if you've come to Australia and you know a place called Byron Bay, everyone's a healer in Byron Bay. RJ, I'm not sure. Graviton, great to have you. Can we discuss Kashmir Shaivism? Well, we can, but we have this. So we'll be going through this a lot more today, Graviton. We'll be going through Lord Shiva's song, and we'll come to that. Shanti, Shanti. John C. Okay, brother, I claim ignorance and confusion. When you go inside during meditation, does it make any difference between focusing on Brahman or Shiva as per the NAMAH? What do you prefer? The thing is, John, if you need an image, Shiva's an image, right? Brahman's not an object of knowledge. So if you have an aptitude to meditate without an object of knowledge, and just to meditate on Brahman means to dissolve your eye in meditation and to be absorbed in it. That's why it's called God absorption or Brahman absorption. It's not like you focus on it, but if you don't have a mind for that, then you might need an image to focus on. So you might need a Shiva, or you might need, anything, right? The Om symbol, or even like a image in your mind of the Buddha, right? So I'm talking about images in your mind here. I'm not talking about actual looking at physical images, but you see the image of Shiva, right? So you know what Shiva looks like, and so you meditate on it in that way. So that's what do I prefer? I prefer objectless meditation. I don't use images in meditation. That's part of how I've trained in meditation through Vipassana, through Vedanta, and through Zen Buddhism specifically, are three of my main meditation training, so to speak. And so, and also if I practice like Qigong or Tai Chi, I don't have an object of knowledge, because when you're practicing those sorts of practices, you don't have an object of knowledge, as you know. So, but it's horses for courses, John. So like I said, like, people have different aptitudes for different things. Some people may need an image, but some people may not. I would say that everyone can do objectless meditation. So open awareness meditation, where awareness is open, you don't have anything in it, and you're cleansing your mind of anything or any activity in your mind. Because once you keep doing that, it brings your awareness continually back to equanimity. And when you're bringing your mind continually back to equanimity, what happens? You start to get accustomed to that state like anything else. And then you start to harness this meditative mind. This is what actually jhana is in the yogic path. Jhana is like this meditative absorption, even in everyday life. So, AD, you're very welcome. Thank you, Shanti. Turd, I had an idea for a shirt or logo. Take your letters JG and stylize them to look like Om symbol with some calligraphy. That sounds great. Can you do it, Turd? I mean, it's probably above my pay grade, but I could definitely have a look at that. Ajay, I love to hear why we don't sleep at Mahashivratri night. Well, Ajay, there's like an idea of this upsurge of energy in this particular month of the Shivaratris. And so that's the idea. There's more to it than that, but generally there's an upsurge of energy in the human system, particularly like, but it can, you could say, okay, that's based in India, right? Because India is coming out of winter. And so there's a natural upsurge of energy. But a lot of people and teachers talk about, it's a universal phenomenon. So there's a relationship there, right? So very good, very good. Okay, what do we got? Tiff, that's a good idea. Yeah, it is a great idea from Ted. Thank you. Graviton, have you heard? Papaji, Maharashi, Nisargadatta all died from cancer. AD. Okay, yes, they did. I don't know in what context you want me to speak about that. Why did they die of cancer? That's life. That's the human body, right? Like it's expand on what you want me to speak about that. Abundant Cross. Hello, Jason. Thank you so much for all you do. My name is Gasina. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. From California, and I had a dream with Shiva Baharav 2 days ago. I made a mantra for him and fell asleep listening to it. Wow. On repeat, he just standing there. I thought I didn't fear death, but this was the most fear I have ever felt in my life. I had a choice whether to go through or not. It was like he was the Lord of hell, but I was sure. I woke up, I was scared, but I love Shiva with all my heart. I was a bit confused, but now I feel like I have a choice. Do you know what that could mean? I would have to think more about that, Abundant. Not off the top of my head. MCO Parkour, good to have you in the house. Hey, Jason, what does it mean by conditioned existence? Are our lives determined by fate? So we're getting into predeterminism there, yeah? Like we're getting into if our lives are determined by fate. Now, fate can be seen in a few different ways, right? Like, because there can be the fate that you experience in everyday life that is just by happenstance, or there's the fate that's predetermined. And so you're talking about predetermined fate, and there's a few different schools of thought, Parkour. There's a few different schools of thought about predeterminism, right? So if we look at it from from especially a non-dual perspective, especially if we look at it from Shaivism, like today, there is an idea that all is we believe we have our will, right? So you have your will as MCO Parkour, and you have your will, but your will, it's to understand that fate exists and that your life is what they would call prarabdha karma, like predestined karma. Then once you start to meditate and down-regulate your sense of self, you realize that it's actually the will of Shiva that's really operating. So there's many of us, but the will of Shiva is operating through us. Now, Alan Watts once said, do you know how you will? Now, he was talking about the will itself, right? So this is why actually in Buddhism, there's a focus on the renunciation of will. And actually, that's the same in Shaivism as well. So once you start to renounce the will to do things, and you don't have any desires or things that you want to do, then you come back into harmony with the will of the universe. That even in Taoism, right, you come back into harmony with the Tao, and that's how you experience the so-called. That's how you experience fate, right? Like that's when you come into alignment with fate. So actually, I speak a lot about this, and I forget which book. I think maybe Enlightenment Now. I speak about this in Enlightenment Now, where you have the two different worlds of like being predeterminism versus things just happen. Things just happen, and our life is not determined. And so it's a really difficult subject to talk about, because you got to if you start talking about karma, then on a personal level you have your action, right? But the thing is that action is still operating through the will, the higher will, Shiva or the Tao, and then we have to live out our own karma. Now, there's another way to look at that, is that once you get rid of that karma, there is still a karma, but it's like I said, it's prarabdha karma, which is personal predestined karma, which you come into contact with when you start to get rid of like this personal karma. So you start to downregulate this sense of action. And so we're talking about getting into a field of wu-wei or non-doing here to understand if there is such a thing as fate and a sort of a predetermined reality. You don't have to really think of fate in terms with a predetermined reality, though, right? Like, because fate can just be something that is happening for you because you've let go of trying to control. That's the point, right? in Eastern spirituality, once you start to let go of trying to control life and control the way that you think life is, then you start to come in contact with the way things actually are. And that's when you start to experience fate, and you start to experience the beauty of life, because you start to see this magic, the magic of life happen, where it didn't exist when you tried to control. So once you relinquish the power of control, then you start to come into alignment with that. So Piyush is back. Hey everyone, good to have you with there. Preston, phew, I thought I might have missed it. I didn't want to ask you a question. I'm at a point in my life where very soon I'll be starting a welding school to get a job that's very time consuming. That's great, Preston. New pick. Namaste, my friend. Beard. I love beard. Hi, Jason. Is it normal for life to seem more complicated when beginning on the spiritual path? Is it just a byproduct of noticing the absurdity of modern life? Yeah, it's a little bit of that. It's a little bit of byproduct of noticing the absurdity of modern life. Yes, it's this is a thing, Beard, and this is what everyone needs to understand. Life is naturally going to start to get complicated when you go on the spiritual path. You know why? Because you've fallen out of accord with the way of the world, so to speak. You've turned in the opposite direction, and you're going in parallel worlds to actually the way it is, right? So that's where problems occur, and we really need to understand this, because a lot of people will go on the spiritual path and will go, you know what, I don't want anything to do with that. I don't want anything to do with that. It's you know, I don't have friends anymore. You know, all of this, right? So, like, I think that you all got to realize that once you go on the spiritual path, it gets complicated, because you have different relationships with people. You have a different relationship with the world. Like you said, the absurdity of modern life, and you can see through it. So the thing is that when you start to see through it, that two things can happen. You start to see through, right, the world. You see through the illusion, and you see through people's behaviors, and you understand why things are the certain way. And, you know, it can weigh heavy on you because you have a deeper understanding of reality. And you see all of these people, they're carrying on, and they're all in conflict, and they're arguing with each other. They're identified with certain things about themselves. So they think that that's who they are, and they're not. And we all know that. These are all superficial coverings. And so we see all through that. And so the thing is that when you start to see through that, you can get very angry because people don't see it the way you see it, and you try to then tell people how it is. This is actually how people who try to convert people, this is how they got started. They got started because they're trying to tell people how it is according to their conceptual framework. So, but the wiser path, be it, is to notice maybe the anger arise, and notice that you are seeing reality differently, and life is getting more complicated because you don't fall in accord with that. But you have to also have strength to go through it. And I mean like a humble strength, right? Like a real honest strength to kind of suck it up, to go through that, and realize that you're going to be perfectly fine, right? Like this, I mean, if you taper your life back to get away from a lot of the absurdity of life, then everything will be fine. And you got to really have what you've probably heard me talk a lot about bodhicitta. Bodhicitta means having the strength and the effort and the passion to follow the spiritual path. Actually, if you have a lot of passion about cooking or whatever you do and this and that, that's got to be superimposed onto your own spiritual process. And so you need to have that real bodhicitta that they talk about in Buddhism. Preston, how should I practice Buddhism, Taoism, and Shaivism with a busy schedule of 50 to 60 hours a week of work? Preston, great question. And I'm not going to give you a BS answer like a lot of other teachers would say. I would say that do your job as diligently as possible, and sometimes the best way to study is to put a lot of things into practice that probably you're learning away from your job. And if that means doing your job diligently and focusing on your job without letting your mind sort of drift off into other frivolous things, then that's a good start, right? Like, and in the time that you have free, then that's time to practice and study, right? Like, look, don't burn yourself out. You don't want to go be nuts and go crazy. You need to have like some downtime. You have to get like find a fine balance in your life, Preston. Like, now, a 50 to 60 hour a week work schedule, is a busy schedule, right? Like, we all admit that. And so the free time you have, you just got to really dedicate to practice. And if that means reducing your time, like say if you can only meditate half an hour a day, that's good enough with the schedule you have. You don't want to go crazy because you need to sleep as well, right? You got to keep everything in tune, right? You got to keep everything in tune. And when you're at work, put some things into practice, yeah? Like, try to be more mindful. Try to just observe yourself in that working environment. I mean, I know this is very simplistic, but these are things that we need to bring our mind back to, and to constantly remind ourselves, because why do we practice spirituality? Well, the reason we practice spirituality in some sense is to become human, a real human, like, and not to be still remain a beast, so to speak. Like, I've been talking about this text, the Pashupati, the Īśvara Gītā. So a lot of that is what I'm talking about. There's a lot about that. So we have to really, taper back our habits and just our mind wandering a lot, right? Like, I know that that's easier said than done. When you're in a working environment, it's not that easy. So I do sympathize with you, Preston, and I've been there in the past. Trust me, I've been there in the past at a job, a few jobs, and working like a maniac. Actually, sometimes longer than 60 hours at some jobs I had when I was younger. So, Jay, thanks, Jason, for the explanation. Jay, much appreciated. The new pick. I'm NAMAH SHIVAYA, my friend. 80, because you were talking about hearing. Okay, I'm not sure what you mean. The new pick. Hinduism will be the religion of the future. Maybe. 80, yes, Krishnamurti spent his life talking about our conditioning. That's for sure. Third, I'll DM you. Oh, okay. I love it. I don't know your email. Go to my website, jasongregory.org, and just go to the contact page, Toad, and you'll see at the bottom. And that'll go to my email. I love all these. I love all these chat. Patrick, the Tao has no will. Yeah, that's true, but you didn't understand the context I put that in, obviously. So, because the Tao is not an object of knowledge, the Tao loves and nourishes all, but does not lord it over them. So, you didn't understand the context I put that in. It's a funny thing on the internet, right? People take things out of context and don't fully understand what's being said. So, the way, I should have said, instead of the will, right? You follow the way. So there you go, Patrick. Hope that makes you happy. People, remember, you got to think sometimes when I'm saying things, right? Like, you got to think. Don't take things out of context. Kind of think about it in a certain sense, right? Because even when I talk about Shiva and we're mentioning will, what are we talking about? Like, what's happening for that specific individual in their life, right? So we wouldn't also say Shiva has will too, to put it in that context. BDK8833. Hi, can someone answer what today is about and why and how long you have been? And is sitting accepted? I'm pretty new to this. Sitting is accepted, BDK. Sitting is accepted. It's the idea, because of the upsurge of energy in the human system, is that you should have an erect spine when you meditate and whatnot. And so to reap the benefits of this particular day. Piyush, happy Mahashivratri. Are we live for the whole night? We might be, Piyush. We might be. It depends on. It all depends on my voice, everyone, and it depends on how many people are interested in continuing this. Yeah, I actually started a live stream before, and it dropped out, so I lost a lot of people, and so only the diehards are here. So it's great to have you all here, though. I must admit, great to have you all here. Where are we? Where are we? Where are we? So, MC Parkour, thanks for detailed answer. No problem, my friend. Garima Katana. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name properly, Karima. What are different types of meditation, and what meditation can I do? Does it that takes us to the ultimate reality of Brahman? Well, if we look at it from the perspective of Advaita Vedanta, then you have self-inquiry, vichara. You have what Ramana Maharishi always spoke about. I actually got Ramana's book lying around here. So the awareness of constantly of the I and the focus of the I. And so this idea will, well, not this idea, this meditative practice will constantly, if you can practice it. Now, this is one of the more intense practices to constantly observe the I and understanding, how you are functioning in reality, where you are operating from. So, and a lot of us are operating from jiva constantly. And so when you're constantly placing it on the I, then you're constantly dissolving the I. The only problem with that, Karima, is that if you have a working life and this and that, then it's difficult to maintain the practice, because as Preston mentioned before, you're constantly being engaged in sort of this social element. So you have this social element where you have a social, maybe it was Luther who mentioned it, this social element. So you have this personality that is kind of like an interface for reality, and it's useful in that manner. But when you're talking about meditating on the Brahman, then it's not useful at all, because it actually eclipses the Brahman. Once you dissolve the jiva, then you start to realize the actual self. So you have vichara, you have that, you have self-inquiry, and I would say just general meditation too. I would say even following vipassana or Zen open awareness meditation are actually practices. And look, listen, I know a lot of people will get triggered because I'm mentioning it in a sense of that I'm applying this practice to Vedanta, but when we're talking about meditation, the conceptual frameworks are out the door. You have a conceptual framework and you have an understanding to know what to do and how to achieve deeper states of meditation. But the deeper states of meditation are the absorption in Brahman. But to have that sort of like the samadhi, to have samadhi, you have to really do the work. You have to, there's a lot of things that come, you have to do the work on a psychological level too. Someone mentioned psychology before. I can't remember. Maybe it was Tyler or someone mentioned psychology before. Atif maybe. And so you have, if you do the work also on the psychology, it makes the absorption in Brahman a lot easier, because you've dealt with elements of the jiva that probably are difficult for you to overcome. So and we all have that, right? So I believe until Mahashivratri get complete. Luther Evans, do you have any thoughts on synchronicity, signs from the universe, such as seeing 11:11 on the clock, and other things that someone connects with finds meaning in? It's a great question, guys. There's 34 of you guys in here. Make sure you all like the content before I answer this question. Yeah, and let's get this party going. Yeah. It's what time is it where you guys are? It's 2:17 in the morning here. My God. Who would have thunk it? Like I said, if I'm usually only this day, Mahashivratri is the only day I really stay up all night. I'm not really a late night person. I like my sleep. But anyway, to share the night with you guys is awesome. Like I love it. I love it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So let's have a look here. Do you have any thoughts on synchronicities, signs from the universe, such as seeing 1111? Yes, I do, Luther, and I talk actually about that in Effortless Living. I talk about the origin of synchronicity. So the relationship actually between the Atman and the Tao. So I talk about the way of the self and the way of the Tao. And I mean, it's a bit longer to go into to explain it to you at this minute, but there's a few ways to look at this, Luther. You know, some people you've probably come across this, and please let me know if any of you have come across this. But some psychologists, neuroscientists, and just general philosophers will say that sometimes what we see in the environment also comes down to our biases, our own biases on a psychological level. So, for example, if you believe 1111 is, you know, a divine number, and if you you talk about that a lot, and this and that, then when you notice it, it becomes much more, right? I know that this is how they talk about it. Now, I'm only mentioning this for you, Lisa. I'm not saying that this is the way it is, but they do talk about this. Now we can think about that, right? Like, for example, if you only see one thing all the time, and then you start to see it in other places, sometimes that does come down to a certain bias that you have. But that's usually in other things that are different to, like signs and 1111 and things like that. So sometimes, like in some sense, that usually you only hear what you want to hear, and things like that. But one of the things I talk about in Effortless Living is that when you start to I didn't. This is not my knowledge. This is knowledge from the I Ching, and one of the things that I got really interested in with synchronicities was when I read Carl Jung's introduction to the I Ching of Richard Wilhelm's translation. It's one of the best things you'll read. The introduction by Carl Jung is one of the best things you'll read, I'm telling you. It's high level stuff. But Jung's talking actually about, the relationship of fate and causality and all of these things. And so, and as you know, Jung does speak about synchronicities. And then, so when you start to let go and you start to essentially not control your life, then you start to see signs in your life. Like you start to see these things, and you start to see things like 1111. You start to see particular signs and this and that. But that could also be a cultural thing, right? Like, so other people might see other things, right? They might see another different number. There are different numbers. Like there's 77. 77 is another number that we could say is a so-called, in air quotes, divine number. And so we start seeing all of these other numbers. And so some people, like from the I Ching's perspective, once you start to down-regulate your sense of self, then you start to see these things, and they're kind of like signposts, right, on your path. So when you have that experience, we were talking about fate before, right? When you have that experience and you see these signposts, it's like these are like energetic signatures, sort of guiding you through your life. Not particularly saying anything, or may not have a certain meaning to it, but may symbolize that you're on the right path, But we don't want to overblow that. right? Like a lot of people in New Age spirituality and people involved in the law of attraction, they make a lot of things about themselves. Like it's such an egocentric spirituality. Oh, I was seeing 11:11 all day, and this happened to me. That they say me a lot, right? So it's almost as if like God has said, "All right, they're the one. They're the Jesus." And so all of these things are going to happen for them. But someone else who's getting beat up, who was just a humble guy, it doesn't happen for him because, I mean, he's not like me, So, so like, we don't want to overblow that, Luther, right? Like, we want to put that in a particular context, and we want to just getting some water, guys. And so, remember, one thing about Eastern spirituality, which is a big problem in the modern world, is that when Eastern spirituality went west, it got warped. It got completely warped in some sense, right? Like where it became a me-centered spirituality. Now, that's because of the individualistic cognition in the West. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with individualism, but in the East, it's a holistic cognition. And this is fact through cognitive science now. I mean, people knew it back in the day. Obviously, Easterners knew it, and that's why there's always been this weird relationship between East and West because of holistic cultures in comparison to individualistic cultures from Europe and North America and Australia and so forth. And so you have this mixing, and then so we have this holistic idea warped in some sense through the West. Now, I'm not saying totally, because I would say most people in the West are genuinely interested in the actual traditional knowledge. But there's an underswell of New Age that's going on, right? So, yes, that's also what the Tao Te Ching teaches. Daniel, Raymond, love you, Dan. Long-time supporter of the channel. AJ Singh, thank you, my friend. Raul, hi, Jason. How are you today? Blessings from Argentina. Gaming officer, namaste. Namaste, my friend. MC Parkour, find it interesting that enlightened beings leave behind relics when they die. Or has anyone discovered the reason why? Can you elaborate a little bit more, MCO, on that one? Mio, how to have a clear voice? Are you talking about my voice? Do I still sound like Darth Vader? Tell me, do I still sound like Darth Vader? Maybe I do. I don't know. Look, guys, I wanted to let you know, like when I was testing the stream 2 days ago, I was sounding like Darth Vader, and so I used Guyang's computer, and then it sounded clear. And then I did the first stream tonight, and as you guys know, the ones who were in the first stream, that stream completely blew up, exploded, couldn't handle the internet, and so I changed to my computer. But the trade-off is I sound like Darth Vader. So I entertain you guys however I can, Patrick, yes, the way. But the Tao cares not what the way is. If one person way is a warrior, that is their path. The Tao cares not if that path is followed. But thanks for commenting. Yes, we all know that, Patrick. I don't know why you're elaborating on what we all know. Maybe you're new to this channel and you haven't seen my videos before. What a strange comment. Anyway, but the idea, even if you are a warrior, is that you have to let go, right? The more you let go of control, the better warrior you are. And the more that you are calibrated to the way, right? So the way to calibrate with or be in harmony with the way is to let go. And that's why Wu Wei is the essential teaching of Taoism, because it's effortless living. It's intelligent spontaneity, but that can only be harnessed through non-doing, not through well, it can be harnessed, again, like I said, intelligent spontaneity. So Wei Wu Wei, so doing, non-doing as well, which is an element of Wu Wei. So to be perfectly calibrated to the environment, you have to down-regulate your sense of self. If you're a warrior, if you're a scholar, if you're a garbage man. So, yes, Patrick, we all know that. So, and so that the Tao moves through you, become an aperture then for the Tao to move through you. That's what it is. So, the thing is that the reason why virtue doesn't happen in our life is because we are fighting the current. And so that's why the river analogy is used in Taoism, right? So when you're holding onto the banks of the river or you're fighting the current, you drown because you're trying to fight the way, but the way is just going no matter whether you want to do it or not. So how do you do it? You have to let go. And then what happens? The Tao's power, the river's current, becomes your power. That's what De is. That's what virtue is. So I'm not sure. I think maybe you're new to the channel. So, but anyway, welcome to the madness. And that's a very important point. Like, we have to let go to allow the actual process of the universe to take place. When we're trying to control and we're thinking we know what's best for the world, that's when all trouble arises, right? So all of the conflict and all of the confusion in the world today comes from people who have an agenda and a belief that this is the best way for someone else, or so forth and so on. But the path is to let go. That's why the whole method of Lao Tzu and the Tao Te Ching and the Zhuangzi is essentially humility, because humility is following the low path, and you seek the low places. Because if we use water as an analogy, the water seeks the lowest places, but paradoxically, it is the most powerful force in nature. So, that's something that is a metaphor for us. And so that's why, essentially, like if you look at the two main Taoist texts, if you look at the Tao Te Ching and the Zhuangzi, the Tao Te Ching is a book primarily of humility and understanding effortlessness and Wu Wei, where the Zhuangzi is a way of also understanding humility and effortlessness, but also understanding humor and not being such a stick in the mud. You know what I mean? So, and humor has got a bad rap these days, right? Like, because people are so triggered about everything. Look at this online. Like, things are taken out of context, and we're not just shanty and just cool with each other. Zhuangzi's idea is free and easy wandering. Relax. Don't be so uptight. Don't be trying to prove your point all the time. Chill. If we just chill, it's all good. All good. We need more people chilling. Remember, guys, there's 38 in here, only 80 likes. Let's pump it up over 100 likes, yeah? Let's pump these tires up. Let's have a party. Very good. So what do we got here? Arnab. Namaste, Jason. Love from India. Only love for you, Arnab, and India itself. Raul, Michael, Jason, have you watched the Samadhi movies? Do you have an opinion on these series? Samadhi. Do you mean Inner Outer Worlds, Daniel Schmidt? Let me know, Raul. I'm actually friends with Daniel Schmidt. We've conversed a lot in the past, and Daniel, I really like Daniel. He's a good fella. Actually, I watched Inner and Outer Worlds. It was a long time ago, in 2012. He made those films really well. But yes, I have seen Samadhi 1 and 2, if that's what you're talking about. And I like it. I like it. Amila, much continued gratitude for sharing these universal truths. Ami, thank you for being with us. AD, I cannot sit normally on a chair. I sit on them cross-legged. The lol. Too much practice. Love it. Anab. Vijnana Bhairavya Tantra. Best scripture for practice meditation. Love it, my friend. Thank you for sharing. True Visions. Why is Mahashivratri celebrated at night? Well, we mentioned that earlier. Dario, thank you. Dario, good afternoon from Croatia in the house. Love it. Terry, it's 16:17 here. Terry, where are you? 16:17, 4:17. True Visions, 8:17 a.m. Love it. Anushrat, 21:47 here. Wow. Anushrat, where are you? 21:47. Must be in India. People might consider listening to a rendition of Rudram. Love it. Daniel, overslept, trying to catch up. Hello, lol. Daniel, the first stream blew up, so this is the second stream. So if you go back and have a look, there was a first stream. I might take it down. It's pretty much a waste of time. Raul, 1:20 p.m. here. Excellent job. Hi, Jason. Really appreciate your channel. Question. The spiritual path seems so confusing. The more I partake, the less I seem to understand. The spiritual path seems so confusing. The more I partake, the less I seem to understand. What have you got? I need more context probably than that. Despite experiencing the jhanas and kundalini, the mind's perception remains the same. Screwed. What is the sign of increasing spiritual development? Is it increasing silence, peace, opening of the heart? Definitely in that. See, Realty, I love the name too. What's important is a lot of people get attracted to energy practices and stuff like that. A lot of people like Kundalini yoga, and a lot of people like other energy practices and so forth. Like, they might be solely focused on Tai Chi Chuan or something like this. But a lot of the deeper elements of spirituality are found exactly in what you said: increasing silence, peace, opening of the heart. See, the thing is that, and I'm going to speak about this. I have a video coming out in 2 weeks about where I was in February. But once sometimes you unplug and disconnect from not just let's be honest. When we do that, when we unplug and that from society, then we start to unplug from the way that we also think about the world as well. And so sometimes when we're practicing a lot of practices within that framework, and we're trying to mold our spiritual practice to our super busy lives, it's hard to get out of our habits, hard to get out of the way that we see the world. And then that's where the confusion arises, real mocha, because your focus is spirituality, right? But then next minute you are, absorbed still in the culture you're from, still absorbed in the daily life that you have. And you're mixing spirituality with something like that. Whereas in the old days, that a lot of people who practice spirituality actually left society and were fully dedicated to it. Now, I'm not saying that you have to leave society, but you have to also try to, in some sense, like mold your life to facilitate deeper levels of spiritual practice as well, which will give you a deeper understanding. And I like what you said, because you said it simply: in increasing silence, peace, and opening of the heart. That's simple, right? It's that simple. Becoming more silent, and in the times even that you have free, don't engage in any sort of chit chat, not even online and stuff like that. Even if you're just messaging someone on your phone or something, this is still a form of communication and not real silence, right? We're talking about the actual silencing of the mind, nirodha, the stilling of the mind. And so, which will cultivate shanti, that peace that I've been talking about. And that is where you start to live from the heart. You become much more of a humble person, from that perspective. So that's very, very, very important. So one second, guys. Okay. Guys, make sure you like. I'm just trying to get because a lot of people who are at the stream at the beginning, they don't know that this stream is on. So hopefully they will return. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. So anyway, so let's move on. Make sure you like, guys, make sure you like the video. Make sure you share the stream with your friends right now. We'll keep this party going as long as we can, huh? Let me know if you're working today or if you're in lockdown or whatever. I mean, I hope no one's in lockdown, but you never know. One second. All righty. Your voice is a little low, but it sounds perfectly fine. Thank you, Atif. Thank you. All right. Luther, what are specific examples of perspectives that change realizations? One has once someone has the third eye opening experience. What are specific examples of perspectives that change realizations one has once someone has a third eye opening experience? Luther, that's perspectives. Well, the whole world will change for you, Luther. It's a matter of you're seeing the world not through the lens of Luther, so to speak, not through the lens of your conditioning. So you're beginning to see the world as it is. And so once you start to see the world as it is, you start to have that experience that Zhuangzi was talking about when he said, when there was no more this and that, you see the infinite on all things. And so in the Zhuangzi, there's a big emphasis on oneness, right? There's a big emphasis on oneness. So, and he's not talking about it in a very woo-woo way or in a very new agey way. He's speaking about it in the sense of unity. So once you have that third eye open, then you it's not like a perceptual thing. It's a sense, it's a feeling you have of unity. You have a sense of unity. And that's kind of the realization that happens. It's not really, maybe not a realization for you because you already know, this intellectually, but may not have experienced it. But that's also that's really what happens, actually. That's the main realization. It's the understanding of the unity of life, of the oneness. That the reality itself is, the ultimate reality is just Brahman or Tao, or even if you want to use the Buddhist term of Dhammakaya. 80, I'm also a new subscriber. So sorry to say stuff you obviously have already dealt about previously, didn't know either. No, it's all good. It's all good, 80. All good. I can go over a few other things. Just for other people, I guess it might be a bit monotonous to go over other things, that's all. But thank you for being with us. MC Parkour, I believe in Buddhism. They call it Ahat Bones. High Lamas leave behind. Some relics at death. Yes. The burning mark Thich Nhat Hanh left behind his heart when he died. Tikwandu, sorry, Tikwanduk, and everything else burned to ashes. Yes. That's a big tradition, actually, MCO especially in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, and also the Vajrayana tradition. It's kind of you could say it's related to the Tibetan shamanic tradition of Bon. So in Bon they have a lot of this as well, where you keep a lot of relics and so forth. But you do find this in Theravada Buddhism and other parts of Mahayana Buddhism, not just in Tibetan Buddhism. Now the reasoning for it, well, it's not a single reason, right? Like, and it depends on what tradition you're talking about, because some parts, especially even when we look at Tibetan Buddhism, some will leave relics, some will have particular death rituals, but then they have like the sky burials and stuff like that, right? Where a sky burial is where there is usually a guy who will chop up the body and they'll put the body out for the vultures and the crows to eat. So this is what a sky burial is, right? So really, like, you're just a bag of meat and they chop you up and they throw you out, and and the birds can take pieces of you with them and digest it and so forth. So there's also an idea of your spirit kind of being imbued through that as well, so to speak, even though that in Buddhism I know that they don't sort of think about like a substantial self in that sense, but there still is the belief that that a great Buddha should leave behind relics for other spiritual practitioners, because they're infused with certain empowerments, like you would say in Tibetan Buddhism, that can facilitate facilitate deeper states of meditation for yourself to hopefully cultivate new Buddhas. Now, this is not just a Buddhist thing. This is also found within Hinduism as well, and also Taoism, where you have particular relics and so forth that are usually left behind. Daniel Raymond, life is not how we think it is. It's way better than that. Yeah, that's right, Dan. Love it. Medicine Simplified. Namaskaram, my friend. Thank you for being with us. Happy Mahashivratri. The garden between us, do you think those who have influence over millions of people truly believe they are helping by controlling? Well, you have to know the person, garden. You have to know context. See, we can't, again, when we make an absolute statement, we have to be careful when we make an absolute statement about particular things. I think some people think that they are actually helping, and other people are just manipulating, right? It depends. But it depends. You have to put it really in context about who you're talking about. You have to know a lot of things. You have to know about their persona. You have to know about some of their history, if they are maybe charlatans or what have you. But there are so many things to consider. Arvind, nice to join in, brother. Thank you. Arvind's a long-time supporter. Only love for Arvind. Turd, Jason, I sent you the calligraphy via DM on Instagram. The message widget on the website didn't allow me to attach images. The image is from Celestina. It should have allowed. It probably went through. We'd have to have a look. So if not, go to my Facebook or Instagram or something like that and just message me through there. To Shauna, 11:30 a.m. here in Alan Watts, the book. He asks what governs what we choose to notice. Can we speak on this? What governs what we choose to notice? Let's think about that, Sean. Let's think about that. Arvin, Jason, about your point on being a hermit, the idea of spirituality being separated from society. What is your view on Rajarishi concept, the idea of the saintly king? Well, again, like it's not that being a hermit is a be all and end all, right, Arvind? It's not really. It's not so much that it's spirituality, is infused in society where you all of us here, right, are within a society. We all have the internet. We all can watch a live stream. We are in a society. We're in a social structure, a social setting. So we are essentially, in the Rajarishi concept, the idea of, the saintly king who is helping others and this and that. And this is also related to the differences between the Bhagavad Gītā and the Īśvara Gītā, because the Bhagavad Gītā being a concept that applies to people within society, householders and this and that, even though it has sort of a slight renunciate path, but it's not as extreme as the Īśvara Gītā, right? Which it has a massive focus on renunciation. And that's one of the big differences, right, between Vaishnavism and Shaivism. Vaishnavism is a very cultural philosophy, where the Shaivism is like a renunciate philosophy. And that's why Shiva is not for everyone, right? Because it can be very extreme, especially when you look at the Dattatreya tradition and the Avadhuts and stuff like this. So it can be very confronting for people. But spirit, you don't have to be separated from society. And you know this within yourself, and you and I have spoke privately about all of this sort of stuff, but you don't have to separate yourself. The thing is that to facilitate sometimes deeper states of meditation and awareness and contemplation, sometimes you need maybe a temporary break from the social setting that you're in. That's one of the core things. You have a temporary break from the social setting that you're in, and you bring your mind back to equanimity. And so that can be more difficult to do when you are stuck in a society and you're in the rut, right? You're in the rut. We all know this, right? But at the end of the day, most of the time we are in a society. So we have to really harness spirituality in our everyday life. And that's actually where the Bhagavad Gītā kicks in, right? The Bhagavad Gītā is kind of a manual for householders and a manual for people like ourselves who are in the world, but essentially not of it. So how do we live efficaciously in this world? So again, we have to find a balance with our spiritual practice and our job and our family life and all of this. And that can be a tricky balance. It really can be a tricky balance. Tanmay Kumar Singh. I'm not sure, my friend. And Salubris, Jason, the temple in Guwahati. Yes, that's the one. The Kamakya. That's on the river there. Yeah, it's an hour drive from where you live. Yes. Well, how far is this chat down? I asked you that question a long time ago. Tanmay, how to motivate oneself to wake up early, need a great help, and to increase concentration for it. Actually, in Zen, there's a practice. Guys, before I answer this question, there's 42 of you in there. Make sure you all like this video. Make sure, let's get it over 100 likes and get this. We'll share this with others and get this out to as many people as possible. So in Zen, there's a practice, Tanmay, where as soon as you hear the alarm, you have to make an effort to instantly get up. And then, that is easier said than done, right? And that takes a lot of concentration. So meditation actually is a way to actually harness concentration as well. That's why in the 8 limbs of yoga, dharana is the limb that is a gateway into jhana, the deeper meditative absorption. So you have to essentially harness and cultivate concentration. So that's why that's important, because when the alarm goes off in the morning, your concentration has developed to the level that you can just go, oh, boom, and you're up and at 'em. So But in saying that, what time do you go to bed? Because you don't want to wake up too early if you're going to bed too late. And I know a lot of other people will say, yeah, but yogis only sleep 6 hours and this and that. But if you're not a yogi, I mean, the human body, that what's healthy for the mind is we need at least 7.5 to 8 hours to get to function normally and to live optimal lives. And actually, if you want to wake up early in the morning, the best way to do that, in some sense, is to prioritize the night before you wake up. So what are you doing the night before? Are you staying up too late? Are you watching too much stuff on the digital screens? Are you truly relaxing at night? Are you not? Are you incorporating a meditation practice at night? And in tandem with all of that, are you sleeping earlier? Now, this will facilitate rising earlier. Yeah, we notice this when we go camping, and when you go camping, you start to sleep earlier naturally, because when there's just not much to do, it's pitch black, and so the next minute you are rising at like 5 in the morning, right? You're rising at 5 in the morning, and it's all good. So. Vishwamitra, Raja, Janak. Yes, Arvind, exactly. Sages like Vishwamitra, Raja, Janak. They are Raja Rishis, perfect in their duties of running a kingdom, going to war, yet still growing to spiritual perfection. Yes, and they're reflecting the Gita, right? They're reflecting the Bhagavad Gita. They're reflecting this attitude of nishkarma karma, this attitude of not being attached to the fruits of your actions, but fulfilling your dharma, fulfilling your duty. And so the Raja Rishis were by nature put in the place of a king. Now, what I mean by nature, through their birth, they were born into particular families, then they became particular kings. It wasn't through what should you say, an effort of conquest or trying to conquer other people. It's a natural process through the Varnas and through all of this what do you call it, landscape of the ancient Hindu cultures. And so that's in itself also a renunciate path. Nishkarma karma is a renunciate path. That is a path of another path of renunciation as well, because you are just following your path without having your own personal so-called input. And so then if you become a king, then you will just be the best king that you can until the day that you're not going to be a king ends, right? So all right, what do we got here? MC Parkour, have you seen documentary Amongst the White Clouds? Yes, I love that documentary. Love it. Raul, Michael, yes, I'm meaning Dead Schmidt. They're a couple of years old. I found them just some months ago. Yes, I love them. Daniel's a friend of mine. He's a good man. These movies and your channel had been a great opener for me. Love it, love it. 100 likes. Let's keep the likes going, people. Let's get it up to 200 likes. We'll roll this one right out. Luther, how can you tell when you should attempt to mend relationships versus it's better to let people go from your life? That's really up to your own intuition there, Luther. Like if we've probably all experienced this, right? Where we've tried to mend particular relationships, but then you start to see the habits fester. And once those habits continue to fester in the other individuals and you see them take advantage of you or whatever, then this is what is called gaslighting, right? This is what gaslighting is in psychology. It's this terrible habit people have of manipulating other people for their own needs, right? And then pretending like that they're doing the best for them, but it's not really good for you. Yeah. And so you have to be very intuitive about that if people are gaslighting you in particular. So if they are, then you have to really put the brakes on and you know, sense if it's good to maintain that relationship or not. Arvind, isn't it the trials and challenges of living in a dysfunctional society that gives us the catalyst to develop spirituality to our highest level of perfection? Yeah, that can be inspiration, and actually, to as you know, if we look at the Zhuangzi text, Zhuangzi is of the opinion to remain in the world. Arvind, Zhuangzi believes that, yeah, obviously in the world and of it. Because you can, in some sense, showcase your not just spirituality, but to you're in the playground of trying to become the genuine individual, the genuine person. So the genuine person, in a sense, from a Taoist perspective, is like the highest, you could say, realization of someone following Taoism, because you are essentially, like, you understand that you're not your roles, you're not this persona. And so you're just trying to be a human instead of being a beast, like we've been talking about Pashupati yoga. So you're trying to amplify these qualities of humility, forgiveness, compassion, empathy, and so forth and so on. But in saying that, Arvind, we don't want to make also anything absolute, right? Like, this is a big problem in the world. There is room for people to renounce the world. There is room for people to remain in the world. There are no absolutes in that context. We kind of have to get rid of this absolutist thinking, um, that, oh no, you should remain in society, oh, you shouldn't leave society, or what have you. We have to think about what we all have an aptitude for, right? You and I may have an aptitude for remaining in society and not renouncing the world totally, but in some sense renouncing the world in our mind, so to speak. So we're renouncing that the cultural framework and the conceptual framework that has been superimposed on our mind, and about kind of renouncing that, right? Because if we look at neti, if we look at not this, we're not just talking about not this as in the body. As in a different context, not this means not the contents and the activity of your mind that is supposed to define who you are. So that's another form of renunciation that aligns with Zhuangzi, that you apply in ordinary life, right? So, I mean, in social life, in a social setting. So, 1 second, guys, 1 second. All right. Love it. Remember, guys, make sure you like the video, and also make sure that you share this link with someone else so we can get over 100 concurrent viewers, and then we'll keep the party rolling from there. MC Parkour, do you think it is good karma to be born in a rich family? Some find the path of renunciation, such as the Buddha, and some crave for more wealth. I actually don't think it's good karma, MCO Parkour, because I don't think, I mean, being born in a rich family can also be problematic, right? Like sometimes it's not the best for people. I mean, we associate so much good fortune to wealth itself, but wealth can be a detriment to us, right? So, the thing is that, a lot of Eastern spirituality gets lumped in with fortune, right? So having good fortune. So, you were born into a well-to-do family, so you have good karmic stock, and it's like, I don't know about that. Like that doesn't make much sense. So, I don't fully believe that. I don't think that that's true. I think that from what I've read and what I know through communicating with a lot of people and a lot of teachers and this and that, good karma is to be born in like a family that is are spiritually focused. So a yogic family. If they're well-to-do, like financially, then that's just the way it is. But good karma is about, and I don't even like saying good karma, because there is like no such thing really as good or bad karma, because there's only the consequences of your actions, and the energy of that will move towards whatever that is. But I know what you're saying. I just want to say that and put it in context. So that you're like it's like so much, the world is so focused on wealth and money and power and status. So we really put a high level on that. And I don't really think that that's the case. I think that if we're going to say good karma, it would be that you are born into a family that is spiritually focused, that can facilitate your own liberation and deeper states of consciousness. That would make sense to me. And look, I'm maybe wrong, but that's what I believe, because I don't think that wealth and that has anything to do with Eastern spirituality, especially when we look at like the austerity of Eastern spirituality. They're mainly austere paths, right? So, and I know that we can talk about other things especially in Hinduism, artha karma, dharma, moksha. So we can talk about that system as well. So which has sort of the wealth element, and like you need to take care of your finance and so forth. But that's kind of getting away from what you're saying. But I'm saying in general that Eastern spirituality is generally an austere path, and so I believe that it's probably better to focus on that and not worry about wealth. And I wouldn't, even if you were born in a well-to-do family, I wouldn't take that as some sort of badge of honor that you had some good karma in the past life, because what's important is your present life, right? And so a lot of people who are born in well-to-do families sometimes are not the best, right? I mean, like, no, I shouldn't say the best, but not the most intelligent about their life, and they only focus on wealth and use money and all of this and that. So, Azu Singh, will you meditate? One of the most powerful night in Hinduism, along with Navratri. I already have meditate before the stream, Arzu. It's 3 o'clock in the morning here. It's 3 a.m. So I meditated before I started this stream. Arvind, thanks, Jason, so much. I totally can relate to how tricky it can be being in crazy society and trying to still grow spiritually. It's harder for sure, but I guess it has its own rewards. It definitely does. I think that I don't like. I'm not telling anyone to leave society. I'm just saying that we ought to respect the renunciation path, right? Like it's very important. And I think that a lot of us tend to uh, make an excuse for our life. I'm not saying you're doing this, Arvind, but some people make an excuse for their life because it might be too hard. They say that they can't have any spiritual practice and this and that, but really they just don't have the bodhicitta. They don't have the strength to follow through with it, right, in their everyday life. So that can also be a problem as well. So one thing I want to talk to you guys about, and I want to come back to actually Īśvara Gītā, because we're going to talk about that today. And I already went through that part on I was talking actually about, and it's good because I can tie into with what you were saying, Arvind, if you're still there. One of the parts that Andrew Nicholson talks about here is the idea of action and renunciation. So, and this, guys, this will give you a fundamental difference, what I'm about to read. It'll give you a difference between the Bhagavad Gita and the Īśvara Gītā. So, this will give you a deeper context of kind of what you're attracted to. Personally, I like both texts, but because I'm such a big fan of Shaivism, I really love the Īśvara Gītā. Yeah, it's one of my favorite texts, I must admit. And where is that one? So let me read this one for you. What have we got there? We got someone. Who's that? Brandy Green. Hi, everyone. I'm new to all this, but willing to have an open mind. Brandy, great to have you with here. Arvind, yep, I'm here. It's 1 a.m., but soldiering on. Love it. All right. 3 a.m. Harini. They say a new energy or something, miracle. 3:40 a.m. Well, if you see me disappear, then maybe it has. All right. So let's have a look here. Action and renunciation. Despite the obvious thematic similarities between the Bhagavad Gita and the Īśvara Gītā, there are important differences in tone and emphasis. The Bhagavad Gita is primarily a text for householders, those members of society like the warrior Arjuna who are engaged in worldly pursuits, kind of what you were talking about, Arvind. Marrying, having children, making a living, and in Arjuna's case, fighting battles, like the Raja Rishis. Well, they weren't fighting battles, but they were kings. Its continuing relevance, especially in the minds of modern Hindu thinkers like Gandhi and Tilak, was in its teaching of karma yoga, the yoga of action. Must one renounce career and family to achieve the highest goal of life, liberation from the cycle of death and rebirth? Question. According to ancient Indian theories of action, karma, any worldly pursuit involves the accumulation of karmic fruits, and these karmic fruits ensure continuous rebirth from lifetime to lifetime. Even the priest performing the sacrifices enjoined by the Vedas ties himself down to the world through his sacrificial action. The fruits of his actions may be positive, ensuring future rebirths in bodies rewarded with comfort and worldly success, like we were talking about before with being rich. Nonetheless, such actions lead the individual no closer to the ultimate goal of freedom from rebirth in the cycle of samsara. Following this line of thinking, only by abandoning all action, both meritorious and demeritorious, and becoming a renouncer, a sannyasin, can one hope to achieve liberation at some future time. So they are talking about renunciation in the Gita in relation to the Gita there. And so So basically, the Bhagavad Gita's teaching of action without concern for the fruits of action presented a solution to the householder's conundrum. So that's the idea of nishkarma karma. So the action without the concern for the fruits of action. So you fulfill your dharma, you fulfill your duty without being nervous or anxious about the results of or the fruits of your action, so to speak. So beginning in the second chapter, the God Krishna teaches that it is possible for someone like Arjuna to pursue his caste responsibilities and to still be liberated. Instead of throwing down his bow and renouncing all action, Arjuna must become a renouncer internally by following his duties without any concern for the positive karmic results that will accrue. It is possible for Arjuna and for all people, regardless of class, varna, and stage of life, ashrama, to achieve liberation while engaged in a life of action. Reinterpreted not primarily as a call to activism, this message inspired Gandhi and his followers to fight for the rights of widows and untouchables, breaking away from earlier attitudes about ritual purity and pollution. So that's kind of the Bhagavad Gita in a nutshell there, right? In comparison to the Īśvara Gītā, which I'll explain here. So the Īśvara Gītā, from its very first chapter, it is clear that the Īśvara Gītā's social milieu is quite different to the Bhagavad Gita. Instead of focusing on the responsibilities of the householder to act, the Īśvara Gītā teaches that renunciation accompanied by yoga is the highest way to know God, to know Brahman. Borrowing from the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, another renouncer text, the Īśvara Gītā demands celibacy, brahmacharya, and non-acquisition, apragara, as preparatory steps to higher levels of yogic perfection. Shiva's teaching in this text is not primarily directed towards a warrior, kshatriya, like Arjuna, who struggles with this worldly moral dilemmas. Rather, it is for the Brahmin renouncers, Brahmin caste, who have gathered at a remote sacred site in the Himalayas to try to clarify their confusion. This confusion is not about their worldly duties in society, but rather about metaphysics. Who is the Lord who causes others to be reborn? Who sees everything? What is the highest Brahman? Although the Bhagavad Gita eventually gets around to answering these questions, it begins with this worldly inquiry on the nature of duty and sacrifice. The first chapter of the Īśvara Gītā dives immediately into the deep end of Hindu metaphysics and cosmology, and at first glance may seem less approachable to the modern reader than the Bhagavad Gita. On the other hand, the Īśvara Gītā's advantage over the Bhagavad Gita is that it goes into much deeper detail about the practice of yoga. In a few famous verses, the Bhagavad Gita sketches how and where a yogi should practice, but its primary concern is the householder's success in fulfilling his or her worldly duties with the right mental attitude. As a meditation manual, it leaves a great deal out. What is breath control, pranayama, and what are its effects? What types of mantras should we recite? Most importantly, how can the yogi cultivate the meditative concentration, jhana, that leads to liberation? Chapter 11 of the Īśvara Gītā systematically details the 8 limbs of yoga, including discussions of specific postures, moral observations, breath control exercises, and vividly described visualization techniques. The ground covered by the chapter will be familiar to readers of Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, as the 8 limbs of yoga are the same in both texts. But Patanjali leaves out what the Īśvara Gītā considers most important of all. For the yogi to be truly liberated, he must become Brahman. So that's both the differences there. And if you're still there, Arvind, that's kind of like the couple of the differences between a lot of the differences between the Bhagavad Gita and the Īśvara Gītā. So, like I mentioned before, the Īśvara Gītā is it does go deeper into the yogic path, and it goes deeper into practices and specifics like with pranayama and so forth and so on. I mean, I was going to go into that, but I think that I'll probably continue to answer some of the people's questions. And so, I mean, there's so many. I actually highlighted a lot of parts of the Īśvara Gītā to talk to all of you about. But if you don't want to hear that, then we can just keep doing the Q&A. So let me know if you enjoy what I've been reading. But Luther, I would love to discuss the importance of intention being pure, one's being, instead of being manipulative or something like this. I would like to discuss the importance of intention / being pure within one's being instead of being manipulative. Well, just generally, Luther, it's better to be pure, right? To be and to be pure in its purest sense, to like be innocent, to be humble, to be compassionate, forgiving. These qualities of a human that we don't amplify, not in this day and age. We generally lean into being more manipulative and so forth because that allows us to get something from society, to gain something from society. That's the difference, right? So that's a question. It's a loaded question that we could talk a lot about. But first of all, like, to be manipulative and this and that generally is just not the right path. So yeah, the reason it's said it's Brahma Muhurt, highest point when the consciousness energy could really be activated easily. It's your boy. Hello. Hey, hi there. Brandy Green. With true, genuine, positive energy, selfless, with no effort, letting the Tao flow through. All is seen, understanding the time of the universe, letting the natural flow of things. Love it. Pure to yourself. Arvind, absolutely amazing text comparison between both texts. Arvind, thank you. Well done. Love it. So good. Who's there? Who's still there? Any questions? Let's shoot them off. Let's fire them away. Let's get this party started. Tiff, trying to be creative, does that go against Wu and letting things happen? If I want to be a writer, should I dedicate time and effort to diligently write, or let go of what desire to be creatively expressive? Tiff, this is really a question of where you are. So like the aptitude you have for the particular path you are living, right? So as you know, I write, I create videos and I enjoy all that, right? And I wouldn't have got there in some sense without putting a lot of time and effort in. And that's for everyone, right? Like anything that you get good at, you have to put time and effort in. It depends in the sense that what is your relationship with that vocation? What is your relationship with your creative expression? It's all about that, right? Is your creative expression an obsession, or is it something that is done in a joyful way? Because this is why Zhuangzi made fun a lot of the artists and the philosophers and so forth, because the people who have a creative intellect, and I'm assuming you have a creative intellect, can get so absorbed in their own creative uh, expression that they become obsessive. And see, becoming obsessive about something it inhibits your spiritual path. So that's one of the big problems with following your creativity and becoming a writer. But as a writer myself, I love seeing someone like yourself who's interested in writing, because uh, first of all, if you want to get to the stage of writing effortlessly, you have to put the hours in, you have to put the time in. I talk about this actually in my book, Emotional Intuition for Peak Performance. When I look at some of creativity in art from the perspective of Zhuangzi. So when you look at it from the perspective of Zhuangzi, to make things second nature from a Taoist perspective, you have to uh, accustom to something so deeply that it becomes second nature, right? It becomes like opening and closing your hand. For me, writing, because I've been writing for a long time, has become second nature. Creating videos and editing and all of this for all these years has become second nature. Doesn't mean I'm great at it, but it means that I can do it efficiently and in my own way. And so that's what will happen for you. Now, I wouldn't think too much about it being right or wrong, right? Like, so, I talk about I talk about this in the video I answer to you, but I wouldn't think about it in a sense that one way is right and the other way is wrong, right? So that would be the incorrect way to look at it. If it's a natural impulse that you feel like you need to write, or it's it feels like, in Taoism they talk about Li, they talk about this organic pattern. So if it's like this organic pattern that you have that is natural to you, they use in Taoism, they use the markings of jade and wood to use to make this like a metaphor. Is that every different leaf has a different pattern from different trees I'm talking about, and it's not, they have all these different patterns, and that pattern is what makes it unique and stand out. And so that Li is within us as well. So it's our own personal psychology. It's our own personal psychology and our own personal expression that harmonizes the world. That's why in Taoism they have yin. They have this idea of mutual resonance or interdependence, about bringing harmony to the world. So your expression, if you follow your Li, will bring harmony to the world. That's one of the ideas. And so, one second. I think it's very important that we all follow our Li if it's natural and it's something natural to you. It's an impulse. If writing is an impulse creatively for you, I would see where that takes you. See where that takes you. But again, becoming obsessive, and if it's something where you have way too many desires that inhibit your own spiritual path, then you will have to probably reevaluate if it's the right thing for you. Because if it is your Li, it will just be natural and it won't feel like work. It'll be a lot like actually Nishkarma Karma in the Bhagavad Gītā. It'll feel effortless, but you're not essentially attached to the fruits of your labor. In saying that doesn't mean you don't want people to read your book. If you write a book, of course you want people to read your book. Ananda Kumaraswamy actually has a really great quote about that. I'm not going to quote it because I can't quite remember it, because he was asked once about why does he write and what writing means to him. And it was something to do with the soul, and it was a really amazing quote. And if you don't know who Ananda Kumaraswamy is, you need to know who Ananda Kumaraswamy is. And some people believe he was the smartest man of the 20th century, and he's got a really wonderful book called The Dance of Shiva. A lot of things. If you want to know about art theory and in relation to Eastern spirituality, he's the go-to. Luther, do you believe in dragons? In mythology, not in the actual world. Brandy, what's the topic? I'm sorry, I'm interested, but not sure what's being talked about. Brandy, we're talking about everything. Ask us a question, and we'll see where it goes from there. Actually, the topic, Mahashivratri, is a celebration of Shiva. So we've been talking about Shiva. I've been reading this text, but it's basically turned into a Q&A. So MC Parkour, are heaven and hell a physical place? I've heard some people say heaven and hell are in the mental state, like how there is in an animal realm and jhana realms. Heaven and hell are not a physical place, Parkour. Heaven and hell are psychological, spiritual states that we can live in due to our experience and due to our conditioning. And, but, in saying that, in some traditions, they are framed as different places, but I think you need to understand it in a certain context, right? Like from a deeper spiritual perspective, they're not physical places. They're actual psychological states that we experience. And so, like even if we look at Taoism, right? Taoism don't have like an idea of hell, but they have an idea of heaven. But heaven is actually yang, is the masculine, and yin is earth. Now, obviously, we can translate that with yang being the masculine, the active, the heat, and yin can be translated as the feminine, the passive, and cooling. And so it depends on what tradition, see? So heaven is not really a place in Taoism. Heaven is one of the fundamental energies of the universe, one of the building blocks of the universe, but not essentially a place. And in Eastern spirituality, they don't, because Eastern spirituality is a lot, they are intelligent philosophies. They never made particular places like heaven and hell. Heaven and hell relate to the Abrahamic religions because, first of all, when you have a heaven and a hell, it builds a philosophy for people that allows people, it kind of molds people to believe that that they ought to follow the letter of the law. And as we know, especially with Hinduism, Buddhism, and Taoism, there's not really this luxury that a lot of these Abrahamic faiths have, where they put in things like, if you're not part of Christianity, then you're a sinner, and this and that. Like they don't have the luxury of this, like because of the understanding of just trying to understand the ultimate reality. It's not about getting people to join and this and that. So heaven and hell is built in that framework. If you don't do this, then you will go somewhere. But if you do this, then you will go, to this place with all of these wonderful people. It's more of a political strategy, right? Like to get people to do and follow the lead. Now, I don't believe some of those paths were intentionally like that, but they became politicized. But Eastern spirituality hasn't, and it's still in its core the same. So, Toad, we're just chilling and waiting for Jason to get the party started. Yeah, I wish. I actually wish I could just take you guys around the city. We just walk around and chat. It's 3:30 a.m. here. It'd be pretty funny. Me, imagine walking around if I had a phone, talking to a phone. David, thank you, Jason. Love your work. David, thank you, my friend. Thank you. Vin, Jason, I always wanted your opinion on the use of plant medicine, organic psychedelics, and the purposes of spiritual growth as a complementary tool to traditional practice of spirituality, namely combining psilocybin, ayahuasca, etc., in combination with yoga, jhana, yama, jnana, etc. I believe there is a text in the Yoga Sutras that mentions psychedelics. Yeah, there's actually Arvind, they talk about the soma, right? Like, but again, soma can be translated in a few ways. But I remember Terence McKenna, he translated it in a way where he's talking about in India that there was like, maybe they were talking about some sort of psilocybin in India or some sort of other plant. And I think that there may be some truth to that. We don't know enough about that. And I don't have a problem with psychedelics. I mean, a lot of people, I think that there's a lot of teachers out there who think that psychedelics are drugs. Now, what do we mean by drugs, really? Do we mean prescription drugs? Is that what we mean? We mean chemical-based drugs that are man-made, or are we talking about nature? Now, I think that with a better term, hallucinogens, or, like you said, psychedelics, or psychoactives. And so we know now that through the use of psychedelics that they do facilitate deeper states of consciousness. If you look at the 5-MeO toad DMT, that now has got to a place where, so for example, instead of taking ayahuasca, if you take the 5-MeO toad DMT, that of the bufo toad, then that just blasts you out through ayahuasca takes you through this whole journey of sort of where your ego is still interactive, but with the 5-MeO DMT, you just go straight to, some people believe, the afterlife, and it's just an overwhelming experience. I've never had that, but from what I've heard, it's an overwhelming experience where you come into contact with what we are talking about here today, the Brahman, the Tao, whatever, that ultimate reality, and you are that in that experience, but it's brief. It's like, well, in that realm, you don't have time, so you go, and the next one you come back, but then there's an overwhelming joy. But for some people, it can be terrifying. And again, I think psychedelics are again, everything you need an aptitude for, Vin. So, for example, I remember Maynard was talking. I don't know if you know Maynard James Keenan from Tool. This was about 25 years ago or something like that. And they were asking him about like his experiences with acid and LSD and all of these and psychedelics and that. And he noticed, and this relates to your question. He noticed that a lot of people who were taking that stuff were not benefiting a lot because they had no frame of reference. And what I mean by that is that they had no frame of reference of what they were doing, like an experience of where they were, going, and so forth. And so you said, in combination with spiritual practices and for spiritual growth, and so with traditional practices. So that's the frame of reference that Maynard was talking about. So for yourself, you have a frame of reference because you wouldn't be here on the live stream, and I know what you're interested in. And I know you're interested in deep spirituality. So you have a frame of reference of spirituality. And so that will benefit you, right? Like having psychedelics, well, from Maynard's perspective, that will benefit you. I'm not saying it will benefit you, but from his perspective, he's saying that it will benefit you because you already have a frame of reference. Someone who's in New York City, who's working on Wall Street, and they order ayahuasca online and they have an ayahuasca party, this is actually a reality that's going on out there. I don't know if they benefit the same of being there with the shaman and having the whole ceremonial ritual experience, because that's also part of taking psychedelics as well. So I believe it helps. And I've told this story on live streams before. One of my good friends, he is deeply interested in spirituality, and he's had a lot of psychedelics. He doesn't have any more psychedelics anymore. He doesn't feel like he needs it. But the interesting thing is that after he took psychedelics, he got deeply into Vipassana, and he was doing a lot of these Goenka 10-day Vipassana courses and that. And he actually was saying that the the psychedelics helped him reach deeper states of meditation, and he got really hooked on Vipassana. So I think either or, they can help either or, right? If you meditate a lot and you have a frame of reference, taking psychedelics will be good, or sometimes having psychedelics will benefit the other way around. So Raul, Shiva, God of nothing at time. Brandy, is Shiva the good of evil? The god of evil? No, not the god of evil. Shiva is the god of bliss. God of bliss. Again, like Brandy, a lot of people, especially like a lot of Christians, will think that they see Shiva and all of these things, but Shiva, the image of Shiva is very symbolic too. I'm not going to go into the symbology, but you can just find out the symbology of Shiva very easily. And it's not, you know, a lot of people from the West, they see these images, these exotic images, and it's very foreign to them. And so they think it's got something to do with evil. The concept of good and evil don't exist in things in philosophy such as Vedanta and Shaivism and this and that, because everything is just your karma. So yeah, it just doesn't exist in that realm. So all right, what else we got? What else do we have here? MC Parkour, I've learned a lot in this stream. Appreciate you, my friend. Thank you. Atif, thank you so much for explaining it so thoroughly. I get what you are saying. The will to be creative in any medium should be part of our lead, that's for sure. I will look into Ananda Kumaraswamy. You will love Ananda Kumaraswamy, I'm telling you. Though some of his books are probably a little hard work. I would say if you check out, actually, if you just Google Ananda Kumaraswamy, there's probably some videos about him and that online. But the Dance of Shiva, actually, I really enjoyed. And there was another book on art that he had. It was called, I think it's something like The Art of Christian Theology and Eastern Philosophy, or something along those lines. And actually, if you know Joseph Campbell, a lot of Joseph Campbell's greatest mentor was Ananda Kumaraswamy. So that's how Campbell got, actually, one of the reasons why Campbell got interested in mythology and art and so forth and so on. But if you want to understand art theory, the theory of art, symbology, and the cultural tenets of it, he's not matched. Ananda's not matched. Mark Salazar, howdy, mate. How are you, my friend? Aruna, happy Mahashivratri. Thank you. Brandy, I am a Christian background, but every time I try to find myself, this stuff makes more sense. Thank you so much. Thank you, Brandy. Thank you. Awesome. Very good. What was one more? I was going to read one more to you guys. There's this one here that I want to read before. So in this one, like the Master of the Beast, like I said in the Īśvara Gītā, the Pashupatas, the Master of the Beast, like this sect of Shiva worshippers, who are the original Shiva worshippers, and that's the master of the animal instincts within us, right? Because we are striving to be human. And so in chapter 7, the Master of the Beast, Shiva is actually talking about the 24 principles, right? The 24 principles. So in an effort to overcome the we're trying to master our beastly nature, right, so to speak. So the 24 principles: action, illusory power, and the three gunas. These and the afflictions that bind beasts are the beast master's fetters. Mind, intellect, ego, space, air, water, fire, and earth. These are the 8 productive principles. The others are the products. Hearing, touching, seeing, tasting, and smelling, the 5th. Anus, genitals, hands, feet, and tongue, known as the 10th. Sound, contact, form, taste, and smell, 2. These 23 principles derive from matter. So they're the ones that derive from matter. The 24th principle, primeval matter, unmanifest, possessing the gunas, is without beginning, middle, or end. It is the cause of the entire world. Purity, agitation, and inertia are called the 3 gunas. Sages know that unmanifest matter is the equilibrium of these 3. Purity is knowledge, inertia is ignorance, and agitation is said to be a mixture. The seers know that the imbalance of gunas comes from error in the intellect. Dharma and adharma, these are the 2 bonds known as fetters. When surrendered to me, actions that bind lead to freedom. Ignorance, egoism, attachment, aversion, and fear of death. Sages call these the afflictions, unshakable fetters that bind the self. It is said that Maya is the cause of these fetters. That is original unmanifest matter, the power that resides in me. He is original matter, primeval, and he is spirit too. He is the eternal Brahman among gods, is the intellect and other evolutes. He is the bond and the creator of bonds. He is the fetter and he is the beast. He knows everything, yet none know him. They call him the first, the ancient spirit. So again, talking about Brahman, talking about Shiva, and just explaining these 24 principles, that bind that bind us, right? That bind us. So there's just so much to read and so much to read in this text. I mean, I could read the whole lot to you, but you just all get bored. So we won't do that. All right, let's have a look here. Luther, do you know if there is a connection between dragons and Eastern traditions? What is the significance of dragons in mythology? I've heard some are benevolent while others are not. Yeah, that's true. But if you look at Joseph Campbell's work, a lot of what he talks about is the idea of slaying the dragon, right? So the dragon is and the dragon is not like the dragon represents the ego within us. So the ego needs to be slayed for us to realize the self. Now, and some people actually relate the dragon to the Kundalini and this and that, but the Kundalini should be more related to a serpent, not a dragon. So this idea of slaying the dragon is a representation of slaying the ego, and that's what sort of it represents in a lot of Eastern mythology. But I can't call to mind one of benevolence at the moment, but there are, I'm sure. Jason, does practicing the Tao and following one's lead also lead to Arvind, we're talking about, also lead to siddhis and other things like natural manifestations, support of nature, good luck, and the like? Yeah, I think that there's a lot of that, Arvind. And a lot of people who practice actually, like, as you know, like Tai Chi Chuan, or even if we look at the Hindu path, if we look at Hatha Yoga and paths like that, sometimes siddhis can be a byproduct of certain practices, but I think that that has to be put in context, right? Like, because when we start to talk about natural manifestations and stuff like that, then, a lot of people have used this in a very charlatanesque style, right? Like we've seen this. We can name names, but we won't name names. So where they actually don't produce this sort of siddhi. So following one's li, I guess maybe there'd be siddhis, but I think that siddhis usually come about by maybe just following the Tao without engaging in the li, where you'd just be like you'd just be following Wu in its purest context. So you'd just be doing nothing and just probably meditating more and so forth, so on. But I think that's where a lot of the siddhis would arise. But I'm not saying that they wouldn't arise through your li, but possibly. Third, a good bridge between Abrahamic religion and Eastern concept is Spinoza. Yes, Spinoza philosophy. Yes, and his concept of God. Love it. Thank you, Ted. Brandy, all religions, I think, have a common root that humanity has come back to. I've always been drawn to Eastern religions, for sure. Brandy, that is true, but we need to also think about that sometimes the concept of radical universalism can be a little bit warped too, because like I mentioned earlier in the live stream, like when we think about the idea of God in the Abrahamic faiths, they are not similar to what we would, Brahman is not similar to God. Brahman and Tao and Dharmakaya are not similar to God in the Abrahamic faiths, because God is essentially, in the Abrahamic faith, is a Lord, right? Is lording it over the world and judging people accordingly. Wherein the Eastern paths, there is no like judge or lord, like they say in the Tao Te Ching. The Tao loves and nourishes all, but does not lord it over them. And so, I know what you're saying, and I believe you. Like that, there is this kind of philosophia perennis or perennial philosophy amongst all religions, but when we get into details, we got to unpack it a little bit too, right? Like we have to see if there is a universalism between a lot of them. And so make sure you guys all like the live stream, and we'll keep this rolling for a little bit longer. I'm starting to lose my juice at the moment because of the time of day. It's 3:50 in the morning here, so. Brandy, thank you. Thank you, my friend. Arvind, totally need to check out this Īśvara Gītā. So much gratitude for your guidance, Jason. May all higher beings bless you with limitless joy, oneness, and knowledge. You too, Arvind. Thank you, my friend. Thank you. John, still here. Love it. I really like the answers you're giving. Even my thick head has absorbed some stuff. Your new mic is excellent. I even like the legit echo in the background. Adds vibrancy. Do I still sound deep, guys? Do I still sound like Darth Vader? Let me know. Let me know. I don't know why that is. MC Parkour, I've wondered what the Dharma means in Buddhism. Is it the teachings of the Buddha that they call the Dharma? Yes, that's right. The Dharma is the teachings of the Buddha. There's a few different variations, actually, Parkour, of Dharma. Because Dharma can mean like, in particular parts like Mahayana Buddhism, like this kind of like this nature, like similar to Hindu Dharma, but sometimes it's used in that context as well. But mainly the Dharma means the Buddha's teaching. Following the Dharma means following the path of the Buddha. David, I like how you talked about Wu and creativity. I wonder what are the best practices to align oneself with one's creative path. Best practices to align oneself with the bed. Well, David, the best way to actually, as you probably know, to get better at anything is just to engage in it, right? And to practice it as often as you can. And even if you're starting from a beginner level, and then it'll end up becoming second nature, not overnight, obviously. But I think that starting is just the most difficult thing for people. A lot of people just don't start things, right? They don't put the effort into start anything. So, turd flinging monkey, thanks for hanging out with us. Go to sleep. So good. Arvind, Jason, I've noticed two conflicting viewpoints about aeons, kalpas, Kali Yuga, and times. Mainstream view is that we are getting worse day by day, but Kriya Yoga and some Raja Yoga's traditions, CLAI, you didn't finish what you're saying. Claim we are ascending and getting towards a golden age before we eventually go down again, i.e. we are on an upward cycle instead of a downward one. What do you believe? I mean, Sri Yukteswar's short count system believes we're on an uptick. What do I believe? The validity of the short count system we could put into question, right? Because it came from the realizations of Sri Yukteswar, who lived in the late 1800s, early 1900s. But then we have the traditional system written by Vyasa. So we find in the Puranas, right? The Vishnu Purana and the Bhagavatar Purana. Now, we don't have to also take that as the authority, right? But that would be considered the authority. My personal belief is that, what do I believe? It's a good question, Arvind. I used to really believe a lot in Yukteswar's theory, the short count system, like the ascending cycle. And that was, I used to believe a lot in that, like probably 15 years ago. My views haven't changed a lot, but I can see where the reflection of the older count system is, the Kali Yuga one. But at the same time, we are only looking at reality through a very limited time frame, right? All of us here probably won't live to longer than 100. I hope we all live to longer than 100. But 100 years in this universe is not a long time. And so we're only judging it from what we're going through at this moment. So I actually believe that with people like everyone who's in this live stream now, I think that the world can be a beautiful place, even more beautiful. I think the world's a beautiful place already. It just depends on how you see it, right? But I believe with the help, not the help, but I believe with the effort of all of us on the spiritual path, we are the change, not to sound like a cliche, that the world has sort of been looking for, right? We don't need to change social structures and this and that. We need to change the way we are fundamentally as human beings. And we have to get out of this habit of, following what society and that tells us, or following a certain culture that may not, resonate with us at a deep level, a deeper core. We've got to get rid of a lot of this psychological baggage that we have and a lot of this conditioning so that we can see the world anew, right? So, guys, I think that's about it, yeah? 3.5 hours. I'm starting to lose my train of thought, so to speak, but I really enjoy all of you being with me. Happy Mahashivratri. And I hope that you have a good day today, wherever you are, or a good night, or Arvind, I know it's morning time for you as well. So thank you for everyone for joining. And remember, new podcast out on Sunday. Guyang and I will be measuring infinity, so I hope you all enjoy that. And sorry about the first stream. And for all of those who couldn't make it and probably thought that I disappeared, unfortunately. So, but anyway, guys, thank you so much. I love and appreciate all of you. And yes, Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Blessed to everyone. See you guys on Sunday. See you on the next video. All right. Have a good day. Bye.